Road's closed.
We're in. I'd like to welcome everyone to the August 23rd, 2010 meeting of the Goffstown Board of Selectmen. If everyone would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, we have two sets of minutes to accept. The first would be last week's minutes of August 16th. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Yes, second.
Are there any changes that anyone would like to make? Hearing, seeing any? Then all those in favor of accepting the minutes of August 16th, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that's 5-0. Oh, you weren't here. 4-0-1 on an abstention. Next are the non-public minutes of July 19th, 2010.
There were two versions, a short version, a long version of session one. So just to see what your preference is.
Motion to accept the long version of session 1, July 19th, non-public minutes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Selectman Fournier. Any discussion? All those in favor of accepting those minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against? 3-2. It passes.
3-2.
Okay.
Phil was nay, and who else was nay?
Me. Didn't abstain, I voted no.
Voted no. How we
Yeah.
voted you as a no?
Yeah. So it was, I guess, a preference on long versus short. Anyway, next is announcements, and we do have a few of those. First is, it was a letter from the American Red Cross from Carolyn McNamara. She writes to Captain Steve Tower of the Goffstown Fire Department. Thank you for coordinating the July 20th, 2010 blood drive. We are very pleased with the overall drive and the willingness of the donors to share this life-saving gift. The efforts of the Goffstown Fire Department have always been greatly appreciated, and their support of the community blood program will go a long way towards replenishing blood supplies and ultimately saving lives. In addition, we very much appreciate your efforts during this crucial time. You may be interested to know that 41 units were collected at your drive. Again, thank you for your contribution and ongoing support of this important community program. I look forward to working with you again on an upcoming blood drive. Again, that was Carolyn McNamara. Thank you, Captain Tower. Next is a public announcement. And again, it's probably one that some of you may already know, but we'll reiterate it, and that is it is a press release for a traffic alert road closure on South Mass Street and Route 114. The Goffstown Public Works Department announces the closing of South Mass Street / Route 114 for a box culvert installation from Wallace Road to Mountain Road. The road closure was delayed and is now scheduled for Monday, which is today, August 23rd, and is expected to last about 5 days. The road will be closed during the day and at night with no through traffic access. The actual closure is near 95 and 96 South Mass Street, so residents and local traffic will be able to access homes and businesses along South Mass Street in that area, but through traffic is not feasible. The town hopes to have South Mass Street reopened for Saturday, August 28th. Commercial vehicles and commuter vehicles needing access for through travel must use the Elm Street truck detour route. Local residents needing access for through travel can use Worthley Hill Road, Merrill Road, and Mountain Road. This notice, detour map, and other updates regarding construction are posted on the town's website. That is www.goffstown.com. Again, www.goffstown.com. Or you can contact Alex Kanan at DPW at 497-3617, extension 27. Next is, in case some of you have not gone to the town's website at www.goffstown.com, it has been redone, and we did get several complimentary emails from both residents and folks from the state, and just want to, I know there's a lot of work that went into it, and I think the feedback so far has been generally positive. I would encourage folks to go onto the website if they do have questions. There is a lot of material and information on there, and if you cannot find what you're looking for, then certainly give us a call at Town Hall. Next one is, I'm going to read this in because sometimes we get not so nice letters, and I figured we'd share the good and the bad. Dear sirs or misses, given that you have conveniently avoided having any email addresses that you can be contacted at, and I'll put an editorial comment there on the website, I would have to assume it's because you make a lot of decisions that the public doesn't like the Rotary or roundabout debacle at Wallace Road. Yes, I say debacle because I believe that 6 months to a year from down the road, so to speak, you will see that the Rotary, not roundabout, was a bad idea. A traffic light would have been fine, timed for the busy parts of the day. I hope you've received thousands of complaints. What group of test monkeys did you pass this through? You can't even handle busy traffic near the library, let alone this moronic, and I'll leave the word out, at Wallace Road. My only saving grace is that I have only about a year to go through your Rotary before I will have to leave Ware for bigger and better places that really care more about live free and drive mentality. With great disrespect, and that was Frank Pody Jr.
From what town?
Ware, from Ware, New Hampshire. I will just want to just comment that our town email addresses are on the town's website. It is called a roundabout, and test monkeys that actually not do this plan, but it was a group of civil engineers, highly qualified, to go through it. It was a process, I believe that was about 3 years with public input and comment. We did look at a traffic light, and that was deemed to be the least best alternative. So I guess we're all entitled to our opinions. I read it into the record, but the town did its due diligence, recognizing that it's a bit inconvenient for our residents and folks from other communities right now during construction. But I think in the long run, we'll see that it is a favorable thing. And as he mentioned, seems to work well in Europe, and a lot of other parts of the country are putting in roundabouts. And there was a recent story in the USA Today that more and more states and municipalities are putting these traffic measures in place. So thank you for your comments. Next is a time for public comment, and it is about 6:10. And I know that, I'm not sure if Andrew pans the audience, but there is no public, except for Andrew. Welcome, Andrew. Having no public comment, we'll move on, and we will go into the acceptance of donations. The first donation is a $500 grant from State Farm Insurance for the 250th anniversary celebration, and we'll take these separately. You just need a motion to accept.
So moved.
Moved by Selectman Devanz. Is there a second?
Yes, seconded.
Selectman Pierce seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's 5-0. And the next one is a $50 donation from the Goffstown Citizens Committee for Boy Scout Troop 99 to the Grassmere Town Hall Restoration
Motion
Fund.
to accept.
Second.
Seconded.
Thank you. All those in favor of that?
Aye.
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 5-0. All right. Let's see. Next we have Public Works Director, Carl Coram. And we have about 4 items, but there'll probably be more as we go through the last one, which is the monthly update. And would you mind, Carl, if I do go out of order just a little bit?
That's fine.
And could we go to the update first? Because I think it'll tie into what some of the public, the comments that we made about traffic and some other things.
Sure. Okay. Well, as everybody is painfully aware, the South Mass project, the roundabout, is still continuing. Most of the drainage work is complete, with the exception of the large culvert crossing, which is why the road is closed this week. Obviously, this rain is not going to help that effort. However, they are still trying to move forward with it. Their overall schedule, they still have, they're still on track to get the road major roads open prior to school. Their final completion date by contract, just so the board is aware, is October, right around October 1st. And right now, the schedule that we're working on, they should have everything pretty much completed by the third week in September. So unless this week really destroys their schedule, they're still on track to getting that done. There is still that matter of the extra money that we approved this year at town meeting to change order back in the work that we had to cut out last year to make budget. And as I said in the report here, we're still waiting for the town of Plymouth. The town of Plymouth apparently discovered that they could get a better deal through another federal program, RDRA, than ARA was for the project they were doing. So they're working through that process, and until they get approval for that process, they're holding on to their money, their ARA money. That's what we've been waiting on. So it's kind of out of our control.
So I guess the question is, what if that does not happen, and it becomes, you know, the third week of September or October, and those monies are still frozen? Obviously, that was part of the whole process that they're already mobilized here.
Right. Yeah, and I would guess that if it happens after Delory leaves town, you know, we could talk to them about the pricing, but I would guess we'd be in a whole new ballgame at that point. So I've been contacting DES regularly, trying to, but obviously it's kind of out of DES's hands as well.
Wait, here's my other question, if I may.
Sure.
I'm going to go assume worst scenario is that it's still frozen.
Yep.
Can we? That's that 50% deal, right? Where we get 50% ARA funding, and then obviously we asked for more money, and through the vote last year, we could encumber that money, correct? Or is it lapsing for us?
You need a contract to encumber.
Yeah. I don't know where it would be at, because obviously it would be a change order to an existing contract.
Or I mean, okay, I guess my other question is, as of October 1st, if we don't have it, then Delory they're free to walk away, right? And then we would have, technically, we'd have to put it out to bid. Okay.
Right. Or,
Unless they agree to an extension.
right. Yeah. I mean, that's a possibility.
Okay.
Too.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions on that project while we're on it?
Yeah.
Oh, it's mine. Duh. I'm like, what is that noise?
Sounded like a foghorn.
Sorry about that.
In your report, you talk about the overall budget being in jeopardy due to many unforeseen conditions. We're trying to balance the extras by cutting back other items in the contract. Can you give us some examples? Like what are you referring to there?
Well, there's if I have my list. There are a lot of things like, for instance, conflicts with the water main. There was several things that had to be redesigned. There were some structures, we had to go with smaller structures than what was originally in the design due to conflicts, because the water main wasn't exactly where we thought it was. So they've got, say, the old structures that were ordered as part of the contract sitting on site, and they had to go out and buy the new structures. So they're coming to us saying, what do I do with these old structures? You know, things like that. There is potentially a claim for all that redesign effort with downtime. Right now, it's just something that they keep reminding us is out there, and you know, our contention is they didn't really have downtime. They kept working every day, but if it gets to the point where we were to go after liquidated damages, my guess is they're going to respond with, wait a minute, we had all this redesign that slowed us down, you know, so that it may not ever come to fruition. East Union Street, we had the paving issue. By the time they got done on the work, originally it was a trench patch on East Union. By the time they got done with their digging and cleanup, there was a little strip of about 8 feet of old pavement left, so we made an agreement with them to just rip that out and pave full width. So that's going to be an extra that I'll have to pay, you know, when the bills all come in. So little things like that. There's nothing unbelievably big, but, all those little things add up too, so. Things we've been doing, for instance, the original design called for concrete all around the curb to be set in concrete. One thing we started to question ourselves of why are we putting concrete in the front of the curb where the pervious pavement is? It's going to have an impact on the drain, the effectiveness of the pervious pavement. There was a cost savings in removing that concrete from the front of the curbing. So those are the kind of things that we're using to offset some of these little extra things. We've cut back on like the budget for uniform traffic control. We had a certain amount of allocated budget for that. It looks like we're not going to end up using all of that budget, so that is getting used to offset some of these kind of extra costs. So those are the kind of things. It's very typical of any big project that you do. At the end of the day, you hope you can balance it within the bottom line of what was allocated. And sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. So far, so good, but I want the board to be aware because it's been a very tenuous project. It's somewhat tenuous relationship. Obviously, the contract is in a difficult position, so that's why we have written contracts and signed contracts and schedules, and so we're all trying to just work through it.
Thank you.
Any other questions regarding the South Mass drainage? All right.
Another project that, the board has not really been that in the loop because the sewer commission's kind of had the lead on it, but we have finally got a bid package ready to go out on the slope stabilization. That's from the slope that failed on the interceptor pipe down behind the landfill down by Moose Club Park. That's all looking very good and favorable to get that completed this fall as well. As the board knows, you sent out the letters for the Lynchville Park service project. We're very glad to have that off our plate, and I guess tomorrow we'll find out how much interest there is and who shows up at the informational meeting. DPW operations, we kind of moved last month when I was here. We talked about we were moving into bigger projects, so there's not as many on the list, but we made great progress nonetheless. Montalona Road and Tibbetts Hill Road, Lauren Lane up to the middle school, Mercia Court have all pretty much been completed. There's just a little bit of small detail things here, but for the most part those are done. I'm sure you're all aware that the library parking lot is at least in a state where it can be used, and I believe, well, actually that's not going to happen with the weather. That'll get pushed out. We were going to pave it this week, but given the weather, I have a feeling it'll be next week. One thing that I know Selectman Pierce is very aware of, because unfortunately Mr. Walton got a hold of him and dragged him down to see this for himself, but
Twice.
for the last couple of months, really, but it seems to be, as summer progresses, it seems to be getting even worse. But we've had a lot of problems down at the East Union Street pump station with illegal activity and illegal dumping, and Mike Walton is getting very, very concerned that it's going to get to the point they've done things to get over the barbed wire fence. The critical parts of that pump station are fenced in, but they've actually put blankets over the barbed wire so they can scale the fence. They've burned a backpack on the tree down there at one point, so we're really getting concerned that there's going to be some costly vandalism, not just picking up trash. So the sewer commission is aware of it.
What about putting cameras?
The police department is kind of looking at an option to do that right now, and of course we've been trying to make more drive-bys, as has the police department. But there's a lot of kids, a lot of activity down there.
I was down there midweek and waited for a police officer to finish talking to a group of about 10 teenagers. He was there for at least 10, 12 minutes, and he came back to my car and we talked. But he's trying to develop some rapport with the young adults and teenagers that are there. They're aware of the people who gather there. This is not just evening hours; it's
Right.
midday.
Right.
And perhaps with the starting of school, that will change. But it's occurring throughout the early evening hours.
Yeah, we had a bit of a problem last summer, but not to the level that we're experiencing this summer. So it just seems to be increasing.
Just a question, would gating that off, putting some no trespass signs. I know they'll go over fences anyway, but if the area itself is off limits, it's much easier to spot individuals.
That's a shame too, because it's a,
Oh, I understand that,
if
but
used
it's
for,
also,
if, you know, it's a nice area, and
Right.
It is used for kayak launching.
that's what I'm saying, and it just seems like you'd be, if you did
But
that.
it was
you'd-
locked at one time, I believe, right? Wasn't there a gate at one time?
there
and
was a
they
gate
o-
at one time.
The sewer commissioners opened it up, and what was the reasoning?
Pressure to provide access to the river.
River,
And,
yeah.
The 4 times I was there last week, there were young adults there with cars.
yeah, and we find all kinds of interesting things as a result of those cars. But obviously the issue is, the sewer commission doesn't want large damage bills.
Right.
There's large plate glass windows, and to Selectman Campusano's point, the police department, one of the frustrations they have is there's really nothing they can do other than go down and talk to the people.
Exactly.
There's nothing saying you can't be here, so it really is just one of those things, and ultimately, no trespassing and gates at least provides an avenue to enforce them not being there.
What's a fine for vandalism?
Don't know.
if you catch them.
That's why you have the cameras.
Yeah, who watches the cameras?
Yeah, I do know that they're looking at something with the camera.
24-hour tape loop. That's what you do. But, all right, so we got that. Line striping.
Yeah, those kind of annual things, the line striping, we did finally get that resolved, and took them all 2 days once they got here to do all the lines in town. And the crack sealing went pretty well this year. That's all completed as well. And the contractor crushing our material, although I didn't hear him fire it up today, probably because of the weather, but all the equipment is in the pit to resume the crushing operation.
If I could just interrupt you, I'm sorry. David.
Earlier this year, you had a problem with the technical specifications on the line painting. Did that all get resolved?
Yeah, it was not a technical issue. It was a
Test.
material availability issue, and they were telling us it was hard to get the paint we specified. They were proposing an alternative that the folks up in the traffic bureau at DOT didn't have any experience with, so we decided DOT's take on the supply issue was a temporary thing. So we decided to wait it out, and it worked itself out. So.
Thank you.
The compactors, both compactors at the transfer station, the recycling and the new used one has been installed in a recycling building. We only sent 2 loads out last week. They were about 21 tons each, which is a terrific load. Our trash loads are only like 28 to 30 tons, so working very, very well. And that's what we were shooting for, was to get 2 loads a week out of there, which it worked out great. And they're very happy that the trash compactor is fully operational again, because since we brought this to your attention, it's been basically running on like 1 cylinder, and it worked, but very, very slowly. And now it's back fully operational again. So other than that, that brings us to the road plan matrix, and we updated it. The only thing that I had not had time to put in here, and I know the board was interested in, is our temporary engineer that we hired. And so far to date, with benefits, everything included, it's about $3,000 that we've spent on that. So Linda Moody sent me that information. I'll update this with it. And as we go along each week, I'll continue to update this. So next month when you see it, it should be updated.
If we could we just go through it just for a quick second? 'Cause I had a couple of questions. I mean, some were over and some are under, and I'm assuming that, like, the best example would be, like, say, Tibbetts Hill and Lauren Lane. But on Tibbetts Hill, on the resurfacing part, the actual was 255, 582.
Yep.
And then on the bottom part, the reclamation piece,
Yep.
So there's offsets, is that what I'm supposed to assume?
Exactly,
Okay.
and just to point out that Tibbetts Hill, we haven't gotten the bill yet for the big overlay. That's why there's no number there in
Okay.
the differential column.
Okay.
But yes, typically some run under, some run over, and we try to use this to manage the budget throughout the summer as the
Okay.
work is done and the bills come in.
The other question that I had is I drove by Tyler Drive in terms of that sidewalk. That hasn't been done yet, 'cause it didn't look like it was done. There's
Well,
portions
it's-
that were,
Yeah,
portions that were, yeah.
right, it was
Okay.
spot
We just hit
repaired.
spots, okay.
Yeah, spot repaired, we didn't rebuild the whole
Okay.
thing. But it's serviceable at least.
And my last question on this one, well, I had a couple of them. The Mast Road paved bike lane, need to coordinate with New Hampshire DOT, private fence needs to be moved, more detailed plan developed. Is this something that you think will get done by the fall, you think it will be?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. As a matter of fact, before Mike Hill was on vacation for a few days, before he left, we actually talked about moving one of the machines down there to start grubbing and boxing out the areas that
Okay.
are not controversial. There's a good stretch that we can start
Okay.
working on immediately. So we're talking about getting a machine down there to begin that process while we work on the more difficult, narrower area.
All right. Are there any other questions with regard to the road matrix? I think it's important to let the community know that, we're trying to stretch these dollars as best we can. We're doing I think Tibbetts Hill's a pretty good example where it's kind of like a hybrid approach where we reclaim part of the road, the most significantly compromised piece, I guess, was it Ryan Road? And then we overlaid it to try to stretch the dollars out as best we can. And hopefully we'll buy 7 to 10 years out of it. It's not the ideal thing to do. I think originally that whole lower part was going to get reclaimed,
Right.
but with the funding that we have, we're trying to do some different things. So.
Just a quick question?
Yeah. And I'll get you.
Just maintenance overlay. This is the first road plan this year that I've seen that term. How is that different from an overlay or a shim and overlay? What is a maintenance overlay?
What the maintenance overlays are it's the first new wear course to be applied to a road that we've already reclaimed. So those listed as maintenance overlays are the ones that back in 2001 and 2002 are roads that we spent all kinds of money reclaiming. So what this is, those are like Back Mountain and Montalona. We don't have to go in and do any serious, it's not like a shim and overlay, we don't have to go in there and do extensive drainage work ahead of time. It's more or less just putting a coat of paint.
It's kind of like
very
what
expensive
the state did. Remember when they came by? Was it last year or the year before? They just came by,
Yeah.
right? 2 days, boom, put a top coat
Yeah.
on. That was it.
Yeah, when
And then-
it's just to keep the tire rutting from getting to the point where it starts to hold water and maintain the crown of the road and seal, the crack seal.
Steve, you were next. You had a
I was just
question.
going to ask, I appreciate the list. Any areas that that you think you have concerns that may not be completed, or are we still not at that point where
Well, the only ones that were,
of time left?
as we noted here, all those dead ends in Bernardville that are kind of tied into phase 2 of the sewer
Sewer.
project.
The drainage portion.
Yeah, it's just gonna be difficult for us to get in and out with the work being done down there. One of the things we're gonna talk about, I assume, tonight is Meadow Lane. Just to give the board an idea, I mean, that's something that, as a matter of fact, I highlighted it in yellow on here, because I read the minutes and the concern that you had. Meadow Lane, if you went and looked at it, is something that we have to do something. I mean, with the wet spring and the winter damage that was done there, we've gotta do something. So we can either go in and overlay the end and put a Band-Aid on it, which would cost us, what did we figure out on here? It's we're showing 22,000. I think the overlay was like 17 or 18,000 just to put a shim in there to hold it together for us over the winter. And what we're talking about in the spring, to get the water out of there, we went in and did a lot of drainage work and dug ditches and opened up ditch lines. So there's very little drainage work that still needs to be done. There's no drainage work that needs to be done. It's all been done. So it's really what we're proposing is just run the reclaimer up there and then put a tight base on it, like an airport mix, so that if we don't have the money to overlay it next year, it'll last us many, many years without even touching it. So it's kind of what Scott said, stretching the dollars a little further. We did the same thing on Mercier Court. Instead of just shimming over the mess that was there, we ground it out and put a base pavement in there that hopefully will last a little longer than just shimming over the broken asphalt. So that's kind of what we're proposing. So it's not a case of not spending any money on it. It's a case of, do we spend, $17,000 or do we spend $22,000 and hopefully get a road that we don't have to touch for the next 10 or 12 years.
Well, we might as well, with this, unless, David, you want to add something, we can
Yeah.
come back to the Meadow Lane part, or we can go right, that's one of our
One
items.
item on the road plan, Danish Park Road, drainage issues, no outlet. The comment says waiting for an easement. I thought 3 or 4 weeks ago I saw a letter in the Reed folder.
We
about
did get one. We needed 2 easements.
2 easements, okay.
We got one of them. The other one is still pending. I don't know if the board ventures down in there, but we went down with the rain and everything, and even though we don't have the outlets installed, just all the stone bed and perforated pipe and everything we put in, at least there's not giant puddles.
This is what the area where they call the pond, right?
Yeah. So our permits are basically held up waiting for the easements. We've gone through and we've met with DES. I think we'll be fine getting the permits as soon as we have the signed easements, and we got one of them, and we're working on the second one.
Thank you.
Yes, Phil.
Carl, on Tibbetts Hill Road, I noticed on the comment here, it says completed, but the top coat, I guess, next year, the overlay?
Yeah, just the little section we reclaimed.
Yeah, now that's over by Ryan, isn't it?
Yep.
And
Close.
Lauren.
Is there a decent transition, though, between
Yeah.
Lot and Ryan and that?
Yeah, we blended, even though it's base matching top, and then next year we'll.
Right, because I know there for a while it wasn't, and I assumed that it was probably the same way they did on Montalona Road, where they came and they cut it out.
Keyway a notch,
Yep.
yep.
Okay, thank you.
Light years better than it was.
Question, just a quick question. Carl, on Meadow, I'm trying to, what are you using for a reclamation cost for that 20? That's like $10 a square yard.
Well, what we're using, because it's just to reclaim, is the bid price of $1.75 a yard. So, if you're looking at the reclamation number that we carry in here, that's including drainage and everything that has to be done. But up there, we're literally talking about just running the milling machine up the road, grade it off, pave it. So it's $1.75 a square yard above and beyond the paving is the cost.
Okay, I was just curious, because last week you had quoted us a price of like 35, if I remember, for that road.
I don't know. When we figured out the square yardage, like I said, it didn't add that. It only added like $4,000 to the whole thing.
Okay. I'm going to go to C, which is Meadow Lane, which is 5C, since we're on this subject. Okay, so Carl, you've already kind of given us the lowdown on it. The road it's a very small road. It services, 5 or 6 homes. It has been compromised due to just its age and last winter and the
Very wet
We've
area.
done, drainage or ditch work, so that the question before the board is something has to be done. So our options are, one, going in there with the reclaimer, you said, and then putting an airport base,
yeah,
like
tighter.
a base coat. Then it's going over with the reclaimer and then just doing what typically would be done, which is about $5,000 more than that. And another option would just be right now just shimming and overlaying it.
Right.
And I know that's not the best approach, but what does that get you? What does that do?
Well,
What's the problem with that one? And
it won't, it's in an area like that where the asphalts have broken up, if we got 4 or 5 years out of it, I'd be surprised.
how much is it to do that?
About 17, between
17
17 and
To
18,000.
lay the,
Just to go in there and pave it and make it look pretty this year.
And 22 for the reclaim?
Yeah.
okay, so an extra 5,000 to do it right.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Because you're
we're not
reclaiming
doing
that.
fabric, we're not, it's not like a full-blown,
Right.
like we would normally do a reclaim. This is
But then again,
Any in
it's a
between the
dead-end
two.
street.
not that much traffic.
What's the pleasure of the board? What are you inclined to do? I know we're managing $5,000 here, but it seems like it's 17 of the 22. That's what I'm gathering.
Right. When I heard, and again, 2 weeks ago, I thought the price was like 35. I would have been inclined to just do an overlay, but just the difference between 17 and 22, do it once, and just your labor
Is that
is
the
going to cost.
consensus of the board?
It's done.
Yes.
All right. Steve, you good?
No,
All
I
right.
highly agree with that, because
Okay.
you guys do those, when they do those shims, the pockets where the wheels go, that fills up, but then you have that thin amount going over the center. And I noticed it firsthand when they did the area down in Linsfield, when they, after one season of plowing,
Peels right
that
up.
thin, the thin part is gone, and it looks, I realize you're doing what you can, but it's not worth, $5,000 more.
But that's the whole, that's the juggling act that we're trying to do here.
No, I know, but
with the limited
depending on
money.
how the condition of the road is, that's all.
Okay, so we're good there. We'll just work our way backwards then. Concord Co-op recycling agreement. Steve, you weren't here last week, but we did have some discussion about the recycling agreement. And I'm sorry, Phil, you have some.
Oh, no, I just want to say that I didn't realize that this was the article that we had at town meeting, because this is an intermunicipal agreement, so
Right.
this has nothing to do with the 149 districts that we were talking about. It's a completely different animal.
Okay. Basically, Steve, and the other selectmen can help me out and refresh my memory, but there was some language in the agreement as to whether or not we had to go to town meeting, Steve, to enter into this agreement, or if we didn't, then the language there gives us the permission.
Right,
We've already have the permission, so.
As long as the agreement with the cooperative is worded that it is
Correct.
an intermunicipal agreement, because the only, what gave me the concern and the way the discussion went last time, Carl, is that they took their original agreement, and originally they were, I don't know if they still are, but their formation was under a 149M. So they talked about the town meeting, a vote on it, and that's where the concern was, that they took the language from the original and they brought that over. So I don't know if, how it relates to it, but there was nothing that I saw in there that mentioned, solidly the 149M.
That was the big hiccup, I think, last week, was did we have the authority, and
Yeah, we
through
do.
town meeting, we do. Is there anything else that anyone saw in the agreement that we needed to resolve?
I did verify, one of the other comments in the minutes was, does the contract gives us the out if we have to pay.
Right.
And the question was, in this market, as volatile and as low as it is,
When would that be triggered? That was the
when would
next
that be
one, right?
triggered? Yeah. And I did confirm with Jim Pressure at the co-op that resets every time, if we get to a point where we have to pay, we can opt out or not. Once the market goes the other way and they're paying us again, that resets the clock. So
Okay.
every time,
Oh, so it's market cycle.
Market, yeah.
every cycle, anytime it goes up to where we have to pay, we have 60 days, we can opt out.
Carl, did he reference a part of the contract that states that?
No, he just sent
It'd be
me.
nice to have that in writing.
And I agree with you, Carl, it's not an annual thing, though. In other words, once we start paying the co-op, we have a certain amount of time to opt out.
Right.
If we don't, that right is terminated. Doesn't reset itself again until the co-op starts paying us again.
Right.
And if
And-
that never happens, it never resets, or if it takes 2 years, or 3 years, or 5 years. But according to the contract,
Yeah.
until it resets and they start paying us, then our right to terminate then is reset.
That is correct. The other thing that Jim pointed out in his response to us, though, was that this isn't like the rates are gonna go up and down all year. The RFAM board, which we will have a seat at that table, will determine the rate for the whole year. So no matter what the market is doing, annually that rate will be set, whether it's pay or not. But I think we'll have notice, and we'll have plenty of time to decide whether or not we want to keep continuing or not. So this is not going to be as volatile as what we're seeing currently, paying gate rate, which, by the way, we haven't paid. I don't think we've paid this calendar year. I think we started in January. Yeah, started in January at 0, and now we're making revenue again. So even as bad as the market is today, it's been, we haven't had to pay. And the co-op, the projections for the co-op in today's market would be we would be getting about $15 or $20 a ton more revenue than what we're actually seeing in our gate rate situation.
Speaking of which, I requested those last week and the week before when you first gave them. They have not come.
What's that?
That report, the environmental review.
Yeah, I don't
that
know.
had
I had
those.
sent those, and I don't know what happened, because I was kind of surprised, because that, right after
That's
we
where that
talked about it,
information
I
is.
forwarded it. Yeah. Yeah, and I had forwarded it, so I have to go back. Unfortunately, I didn't get Sue's email until I got down here with my phone, but it's,
I think one of the things that I kind of wanted just to clarify is that with the co-op, the rate that we will get from the co-op will always tend to be better than what we're paying now. So if market conditions say were to improve under our current agreement, odds are a lot better that the co-op would be paying more for the recycling. So if we're, because of the nature of the co-op, and it's really a non-profit, no matter what the cycle, no matter what the market cycle is, we will always be in a better position than if we were doing it like we're doing it now privately. So, to me, I think in that regard, and having the ability to get out for a variety of different reasons, or any future to not to commit to a board to have to buy into this thing, I'm kind of convinced that we need to proceed on this, and I think we're, with the vote from town meeting, in which the town gave us the authority to do so, unless there's some other issues that I'm unaware of, we should be able to approve it and
Okay.
sign it.
I guess the first.
I have also,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll have Nick after you.
Thanks. In here, it says that on such terms and conditions as the selectmen deem in the best interest of the town. So I guess that's the determining factor, is this is the best deal that we come up with, and it's in the best interest of the town, then we should go forward with it.
Nick?
I had also asked if we could get a list of the other communities that are signing on, and we had talked about, we do have a seat at the table, but our votes are based on population.
Right.
So we have a 40 vote. It's 500 per, one vote per 500. Depending on the larger communities, if a large city of 100,000 were to get in, they have a 200 vote.
Right.
Which, sometimes the votes may not be in our interest.
Right.
So I had asked last week if we could get a list, or at least an idea of who else has signed on or is planning on signing on. And the bigger issue that I think, at least at a minimum, we should wait for, and I'm for this, I think, but I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure it is the absolute best, and we've dotted all our I's and crossed all our T's. Attorney Drescher has not gotten back with the review.
Well, the current guy, he reviewed the draft last fall, but he hasn't reviewed
The final
him and about
document.
30 other attorneys all did the draft. What you have now is the compilation of all of that.
And did you
So-
find out if the Attorney General's office has reviewed this intermunicipal agreement?
I did not.
That's fine.
Sue, where does the town attorney stand then on reviewing this document? Have you?
He hasn't gotten back.
We
to us.
haven't gone back. He's had it for how many weeks now? 2 weeks?
Yeah, whenever the Solid Waste Commission took their vote, the next day it went to him.
We have not heard back from him.
That's fine.
Carl, by any chance, do you know what the relationship is, or maybe that's not the word to use, but how many of the communities that will be or are contemplating being part of this cooperative that are part of the Concord Solid Waste District?
Well, all but 2 of the existing co-op communities, I believe. There were 2 co-ops communities that dropped out largely because of this.
They dropped out of the district, or they dropped out of?
Co-op, they had the opportunity to because this is a co-op project, so everybody in the co-op is in this. But I think Hopkinton and two of the smaller towns said, we don't wanna do that, so they opted out of the whole co-op.
So, communities that make up the district are not necessarily all in this.
Well, all the ones that are still in a co-op, I believe, are still in this. They opted right
No,
out of
you
the
say
co-op.
co-op, I'm talking about the solid waste district, the Concord Solid Waste
I'm
District.
not familiar with the solid waste district.
Okay.
The Concord Co-op, which is that first group of 27 communities, 25 of those 27 are in this project.
Okay.
The other two opted out. And then, I don't know, I've never seen a list of who comprises the total of the 25,000 tons that are committed. And obviously, they don't have a final list because all the towns are right where we are. I would think that if I asked them, I could get a list of who comprises that 25,000 tons. I don't see why they couldn't tell me that, so we would at least have an idea of what other towns are talking about this. But I know large communities, Concord is the only other large city that's in it. There is no other large city currently in it.
I just question, because you brought that up, any reason why those two communities would opt out because of this? This seems like, from what we can see here, a moneymaker.
They didn't feel that they had the infrastructure to implement single stream. They have small transfer stations where people bring them stuff. They've invested in baling equipment, and, they kind of had it down to keep their recyclables separated and baled, and they make revenue from the baled product, and they just didn't see it was in their best interest to change that.
So they would be required to
Yeah.
have single stream? They stayed in?
I hear that a number of this board were favorable of this, but we want to make sure some of the loose ends are tied up. And I'd like to summarize here in the next minute what those loose ends are that we all want, so we can move forward with a motion. And I hear that we need a response from Mr. Drescher. We need a list of the communities that are tentative part of the co-op. Any other items that we just discussed?
I just put legal review and listed towns.
And the environmental review.
Oh,
Yeah,
environmental
I
review.
knew there was a third one.
Okay,
That I can send you right off in the morning.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to digress just for like 2 seconds here. If, with regard to legal review, I just want to, this probably pertain to you, but if there's, an expectation, if we have an expectation that something's going to get reviewed in, say, 2 to 3 weeks, and that's where he's at, then I'm fine. If we're putting so much on town council's plate that it's just impossible to do the work that's required, then maybe it's time that we think about having another attorney do some other things, Because if the plate's already full, and now all of a sudden, we want to try to get a response within, let's say, 2 or 3 weeks, but yet we're waiting. I mean, I know how our attorneys work. I mean, it takes time to do the analysis. You just can't do it in a day. But I would just wonder if there's an opportunity to maybe slide some things to another firm, or if Attorney Drescher's willing to bring on another associate or something.
Originally, we hired Attorney Drescher to take care of all our litigation cases.
Right.
And
Now it's
that
grown
right.
considerably.
And because he's so good, we impose upon him other reviews, like our annual warrant, any kind of legal agreements that come up. And, his first priority is his litigation and meeting the court deadline. So those do take second fiddle to his litigation work. So that is a possibility, and I can discuss that with him,
Yeah.
that if he can't meet certain timelines, a reasonable timeline, that we will have to find someone who can.
Right. Or if he can, is there somebody he recommends, or is he willing to bring an associate on or
He does have an
something?
associate
Yeah.
on, but I'm not sure
Yeah.
how frequently he's there in the summer,
Right.
anyway.
Okay. Anything?
No.
All right. if all is, again, I think as Selectman Pierce stated, the legal review, the list of towns, and the environmental impact, that study, once we can get concurrence on those things, I think that the board's sentiment is to proceed. Last but not least is 5A, which is an RFP for real-time kinetics global navigation satellite system. And again, that's 5A in your packets.
Just by way of quick background, this replaces the existing system that we've been using for probably getting somewhere near 8 to 10 years old now. I know the concern raised last week, or raised in the minutes, was, do we need this accuracy? And for the work that we're doing, what this primarily does for us, it's our design survey. So this is what we're using to locate the ends of pipes, structures that are in the road, things that'll be in the way of construction. We have one of the lower end models already. We already have it, and it is supposedly can get down to like within a foot or something. That's not our experience. All of the accuracies that you see in any of this equipment and the specs relies on a wide open sky out in the middle of a field on a sunny day, when the moon is aligned just right. We've never seen anything. Well, we used our instrument, our handheld instrument, to go out and do our sign inventory. We had signs that were out in the middle of the intersection. We had signs that were out in the road. So in a lot of cases, it was within 4 feet, 5 feet, even though with the antenna it was supposed to be within 6 inches. That just wasn't our experience. Obviously, when you're designing a construction project, you need to be closer than within a couple of feet. To the issue of why we need to hire a surveyor, there are two aspects to survey that are important to consider. One, obviously, is technically when you're designing something, will it work? You have the things in the right place? Will water flow downhill? That's what, as DPW, we're the most concerned with. But the other aspect of survey is the legal implications. When you're dealing with property boundaries between two individuals, you're affecting somebody else's property. That's where a surveyor's license comes in. That's where the surveyor's stamp is important. So what DPW typically does is, if it is strictly construction survey and we can do it ourselves, we try to do it in-house. And we only bring in a licensed surveyor when there's a boundary line in dispute, or we're going to impact somebody's property, something where we need a surveyor's stamp as part of the legal process. There have been times when we're overloaded where we'll pay a surveyor to come and stake a center line for us. And that typically is, the one I can think of we went out to bid was when we redid Tibbetts Hill Road. They had like 4.5 miles of center line to lay out. That would have taken us forever. But for a surveyor with an experienced survey crew, I think they were in and out of here in a few days and got it done. So that, again, is a judgment call on what's the most effective use of the resources that we have to make. I try to limit how often we bring a private surveyor in, and try to limit it based on the town's exposure to liability. But without this equipment, we would have to rely a lot more heavily on the private surveyors to just simply do construction survey, pre-design survey, just so we can make sure we have all of our assets in the right place. Eventually, I hope we get to the point where all of our GIS assets are accurately located, and we have the grades of them all established, and it's all in our computer, but we're not there yet. We're still kind of going through that first cycle of we got the stuff they picked up from aerial photography. Most of it's pretty good, but under tree cover, behind poles, whatever, they didn't get everything. So those are the kind of things that we're out there picking up, tying it all together. So I think, the system, we did the return on investment last year, and it was very favorable when we went through CIP. I can tell you that the spec we put together, we opened it up, so we are not, I don't anticipate we will be replacing this with a Trimble unit, which is, buying a Trimble surveying unit is like buying a Cadillac or something like that. I mean, it is the top-end equipment. However, there are a lot of other Chevrolets out there that can get the accuracy now that we've gotten with our Trimble. So I expect we'll save some money with this bid when we open the bid packages. I don't think we'll spend the 40-something thousand that we set aside based on Trimble quotes. Last year, there was also, when we went through the budget process, there was a lot of talk about whether we needed the base station or whether we could just buy the roving, pick up the data and rely on Trimble's, well, not Trimble's, but Maine Technical Source has a base station network that they're building. Our points in southern New Hampshire, we're kind of, there's a tower or there's a base station in Concord, and there's one down Nashua or south. We're kind of right where the two circles intersect. So I'm not real comfortable that we'll get that accuracy that we want because we're on that overlap. And as I said, with the different equipment, I think we accomplish the same thing. We get the budget down to where we're not spending $50,000 to get what we're after, but we're still getting the accuracy of the full system. So this is kind of what we're recommending. I don't know what else I can add to it.
Carl, I'm pleased to see that the specifications allow various manufacturers, the salesman representing various manufacturers, to propose a bid for this, and not just so focused that it's very limited in what manufacturer's equipment is suitable. So I thank you for that.
You have a question?
Yeah, just a quick question, Carl. With this degree of accuracy, we had some discussions earlier when we went through CIP of trying to reduce some of the next year's expenditures, cemetery expansion being one of them, where we're no longer providing deeds for plots where they're just right to inters. Would having this accuracy allow us to in-house lay something like that out?
Well, that would probably be a legal question more than a question of me. Technically, does it? Yes. We would be able to do it. If legally we can, technically we'd be able to. I don't know the answer to that, but we can burn a point and we can get just as accurate as Mike Dahlberg can.
So when you say legally,
well, just I don't know if that right to inter would address that or not. I mean, you're right, we're not selling a deed, but
maybe that's something we can look into.
Yes, Phil.
But I think at least what this will do, give the accuracy, so if they do go in and do the road, what we discussed, that the road will be in the right place.
All right. I need if there isn't any further discussion, I would need a motion to.
Just one
Yes.
question, because I'm still trying to get I understand this is going to, most likely this will go forward, we'll have these bids, and they'll come back, and I look at the idea that there's going to be two people trained to do it, et cetera, and we're saying, hey, what's the cost, what's the cost benefit of it? When this comes back, will there be some type of pro forma saying, hey, by the way, we plan on doing so many roads or so many pieces where we would utilize this piece of equipment versus if we were subletting it out, so I can get an idea?
It was done last year.
I don't have any recall of that.
No, you might not have been on the board, but I could have sworn
I
that
can
was.
send you the return on investment that we did do last year.
Okay, something like that, just so I have an idea, I appreciate it, thank you.
Motion to authorize the release of the RFP for the
Is there a second?
survey equipment.
Is there a second? Second. Selectman Devanza seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against? All those abstaining? Is that unanimous? Unanimous. Carl, would you mind sticking around? Because we're going to skip. Only because I'd like to go to CIP. Because that pertains to your department. Last week, we had some discussions, and I have to get my CIP matrix out, but obviously the big ones are the solid waste vehicle, the dump truck, and the road program. And although the board has not, officially stated what our ultimate goal is for next year's budget, we know that the budget committee gave us instructions to come in with a budget that was 10% less than this current budget, and that will be quite a challenge, I think. So our first step is looking at CIP and what can we do there. We went through page by page, and some of the things that came up, the biggies, were the road program and then the vehicles. I'll just start off. I mean, I had stated a couple of weeks ago that I think, in my own opinion, and I need to get your assessment. It seems to me that the solid waste vehicle and the dump truck are pretty darn critical. We have to kind of position things so that those things are in CIP. And I'm not saying that the road program is not critical, but if I have to make a difficult choice, I would slot the two vehicles ahead of fully funding the road program. So that's kind of where I'm at. And as we start talking about CIP, was trying to get to a significantly lower number in CIP for the road program itself. Knowing that it's not what we need to really keep on our program, but yet we're in an economic situation where we've got to fix the dump truck so we can plow and do our road maintenance, and we need the solid waste vehicle so that we can pick up the recycling and the garbage. So that's kind of where I'm at. I don't know where the other selectmen are at, but if we're going to reach, if we're going to keep that CIP, say, level funded per se, the only way that we're going to, the road program is the biggest nut, and maybe that goes towards doing more hybrid approaches where we talked about Tibbetts Hill earlier, where we had that one stretch. Maybe we reclaim. We have a lot of other roads that are in pretty rough shape. Is there that potential to do it, or to try to just to buy us 5 to 10 years if we can? So that's where I'm. That's where I'm at, and I think that's why we have, the board, we're at this point now, we have a full board to try to, make some adjustments to CIP. Does any other selectman share that same sentiment or thought process? Nick, you do? Anyone else?
Scott, if I could just give you a little food for thought. I don't know what kind of background information the board was given as it went through came from planning board to the board of selectmen, but just to back up what you just said, DPW, when we put our matrix together to submit to the CIP committee, obviously last year with the failure of the bond, those vehicles it's a giant snowball that just rolls down the hill, and it every year we have big equipment that needs to be replaced. So we actually tried to be proactive. And just that 1 year of not getting the equipment we needed, we had to evaluate the whole matrix. And we actually extended, instead of 10-year cycle on dump trucks, we slid it out to a 12-year cycle on dump trucks. We tried to lighten the load because we knew it was unfathomable to just roll the snowball without making some adjustments. So if that was to go a second year, I don't think it would take us long to get into a condition where we would have a serious problem with the overall fleet. It wouldn't take us long to get into that. And the other thing I just wanted to mention to the board, because again, I don't know if you noticed it when you reviewed CIP, but the CIP committee made 2 significant changes to the matrix this year. They took the sidewalk money out. Their reason being that it smelled too much like a maintenance program than a new program. So as the board knows, you guys adopted our overall sidewalk management plan, which was funded out of CIP. That is now gone. So I've already submitted the budget to Janice, but I sent her an email yesterday or the day before just telling her you need to add a line in our operating budget for sidewalks in this amount. And the other thing they did that with was the drainage system line. We always had 2 drainage lines, one for new drainage systems and one for repair of old drainage systems. Again, the CIP committee made the decision that we shouldn't have 2 drainage lines. It looks like it's all kind of repair, so they recommended we lump it all together. So those are 2 impacts that you're not going to see on that matrix, but when you get the operating budget, you're going to see some pretty hefty, what look like very hefty increases in our operating budget, and they're really lines from CIP that got slid over to the operating side.
All right.
Um,
You wanna say
I
something?
have a question while you're searching.
Okay.
The CIP committee did not endorse one of your recommendations, Carl, and that was for the Freightliner tractor, $118,000. And they recommended it be delayed for 2 years. I don't know if this data sheet is correct, 634,000 miles.
It's correct.
Has it gone to the moon and back?
Well,
But your thoughts on the delay of this one item?
well, I think if, just to put that number of miles in perspective, I think when we bought that truck, it had 450,000 miles. So it's our backup truck. We bought it used to serve as a backup truck to a brand new tractor. Obviously, it gets used because the miles have climbed. I think given limited dollars, we probably would have gone the same place. I mean, given the 4 big pieces of equipment that we had on the matrix, the backhoe at the transfer station, that tractor, the backup tractor replacement, the truck and the garbage truck, I think Mark would have made the same recommendation. The thing with those tractors, they're out on the road every day. I mean, they're hauling a lot of miles. Something serious could go on one of them things any day. And you get up to 600,000 or 700,000 miles on a truck. At what point is it's going to cost you some money? And that's where we're at. So, but weighing that against the other things that are in there, the dump truck and the frontline garbage truck, I think we would have taken the same risk.
Thank you. Yes.
Carl, do you know what motor is in that by any chance?
I don't. I'd be winging it if I told you.
Okay, you don't know if it's a Cummins thing,
I believe it is. That's what I would have guessed.
with a
but
turbo?
I can certainly find out.
So, I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks ago, as we were going through this, I kind of threw out a number of about like $1.5 million for the road program, and it's about $1 million less than what I believe it was, right? Yeah, it's about $1 million less than what's in there proposed this year. It was proposed and approved by CIP at that amount. So that's kind of where I was at, so obviously we'd be substantially reducing the road program from what was approved by CIP, but I wanted just to make mention of a couple of different things. The adopted CIP this year was $1.9 million, so it would be taking a hit in that regard, and lest we forget too that there are certain things that we have put in, such as the South Mast bond, some other things that are eating away at that. But I think if we go this route, it'll buy us, a year. We can kind of button up some of our projects that we've got going on, catch up on some of the engineering work, et cetera, and then hopefully if things get a little better economically, we can be better positioned, for some of the out years. But I think it's safe to say that we're going to have to kind of do this hybrid approach with our road plan, where we may not be doing the optimum in terms of reclaiming these roads, but we may reclaim portions of them or do these, whatever you call it, shim and overlay, or I don't know what the hell, what's the other term that's used, mill and overlay, et cetera, which is not optimum, but I don't know how we kind of get by this. The vehicles are kind of daunting in the sense that the out year, 2012, isn't prettier because there's other vehicles that are needed in 2012, which if we keep deferring and deferring, we're going to be in worse shape. So that's kind of where I'm at. I don't know where everybody else is, but I think my position here with regard to CIP and specifically with DPW would be to, put the dump truck and the solid waste vehicle as our numbers 1 and 2 priority, and then the road program would obviously have to be compromised. Anyone else want to be heard?
Other items here?
On a DPW side?
Yes.
Yeah.
And to start off, yes, I'm comfortable with those plans for the vehicles. They are needed. Carl, $440,000, Worthley Hill drainage upgrade. Could any of that project be split over 2 years?
Well, I don't know how, what that 440,000 involves is obviously replacing the whole drainage pipe up the hill. That's the vast majority of it, and then you get into the patching or reclamation of the road after you've improved the drainage. So I don't know, I don't remember off the top of my head how that breaks apart, but if you did just the pipe, to get to where the pipe is most failed, it's up near the top, up near Tyler Drive. So you kind of have to do the whole carrier pipe up the hill, which is the biggest share of that $400,000. Then you could patch it and then come back later and reclaim the road, but my guess is you'd save, $80,000, $100,000, something like that, and you'd have to put temporary trench patching in its place.
Is that pipe going past Tyler all the way up to Merrill, or where?
The development, Viking Orchards,
Yeah.
has agreed to do the road from Tyler.
Tyler, all the way up to
Yeah.
to past Merrill where it starts to, okay.
Yeah, so this is just finishing the chunk that's not part
So
of.
from Tyler to where we would connect now is 440.
Yeah, we did, as part of the ARA project down, we redid the drainage at the bottom by Lamson. We designed it such that it could take the drainage coming down the hill someday, but it's that pipe in the middle that is what we're talking about.
Is this a sublet project?
The 440 is based on putting it out to bid and somebody doing the work.
Can I,
Yeah,
can I follow?
yeah,
Can
I got
follow?
you, then Nick,
Well, I
then
think
Phil.
you know where I'm going to be going probably then. If we were talking reductions within the road program, and I realize that we sublet out most of that with other projects, would this be something that's obtainable or something that we could do? Or that we'd want to do? You follow where I'm
Yeah,
at. I'm
yeah.
just asking that question.
I've had this discussion already with one of the other selectmen about the library parking lot or the cemetery. Is that something we could do? And, the answer is, yes. The DPW forces, we have no big projects planned next year. We've kind of gotten out of the in-house work mode. But as you saw this year, we added, Miles and Moset and a little chunk of Tibbetts, and we started the year with nothing in the DPW plan and all these little things, the library parking lot, which is great. I'm not complaining about it. But as we sit down for next year, we all want to communicate clearly on what do we want to do in-house and what do we not, because we got to spend the winter putting together bid packages for the stuff we're not going to do in-house. The answer is, technically speaking, we can do it. But I don't want to get into the position where we stretch our forces so thin that people are complaining and screaming at us, and then we're all back to where we were a couple of years ago.
And I realize we're in that early process, but maybe we could look at that as an option and prioritize it. Maybe it fits in with
Yeah,
with the bigger plan.
Yeah.
you good?
I guess I'm good because you're going to go.
No, I'm not going. I'm facilitating. Phil, then.
That Viking Orchard project got a 90-day extension, and one of the things that the developer requested, and the board didn't act, and they postponed that until they come back in, was phasing, 3 phases, and they wanted to build out the first phase to be the lots that were right on Worley Hill Road. And then they wanted to be able to take that, and when they do that, invest it into the rest of the project. And the question was asked about the bonding, and they wanted to reduce the bonding, and one of the concerns that was brought up was that, if this road gets done, and they do that, up to Tibbetts, then they have to come in, because the Phase 2 and Phase 3 are the very heavy construction portions with a lot of blasting and a lot of earth moving in there. So those trucks coming in, what they would do to that road. So that might, I don't know how that is going to play into the timing of this also. Now, I know Megan was there to hear that, and I don't know if there's been communication in that regard.
Yeah, my question was to you, Phil, was, does this thing appear like it's gonna go forward? That was one. We get impact fee money, so
But that's for down below.
What's down below?
no,
The-
offsite improvements, that's what you're talking about. I'm not talking about, there's impact fee money per residential lot, which DPW gets certain amount per lot. It's not that much,
Right.
1,000.
Yeah, we never see it either, it just shows up
Right.
as a
Sure.
revenue.
Right.
It's just part of the revenue calculation.
I think there's 4 lots there.
No, I think it has to go
It's-
into
it's-
account to be held. We
nothing.
can't just use it as revenue.
Yeah, we
But
can't.
it's, he says it's only 4 lots.
I
You're
think it's
talking
4.
1,000.
Oh, that they want to develop.
No,
in
no,
first-
the 4 what they wanted to do was Phase 1, was the ones that are right on
the road.
Worley.
Right.
And I think it's about 4 lots. I'm not,
Hmm.
maybe 5,
But it-
but
Sue, do we have money in DPW impact fees?
There's some, we're going to use part of it for the rail trail and part of Parks and Rec for the rail trail grant next year.
Right, those were,
I think it was 70 and 20 or something
Yep.
like that.
And there is money this year, at least emails are going back and forth right now between Brian Rose and Janice and Megan about that developer's off-site improvement money to the intersection, as Phil said, is $18,000 or $20,000 or
usually not
somewhere
much.
thereabouts that.
a couple of percent.
It's only the impact they're adding to the overall. Is it, I think in the squeeze that we're in here, to me, this doesn't seem like it's the highest of priorities in terms of what we have to do. And if we're gonna have to cut, I think it's something like $2 million from CIP to get to a level fund. That Worthy Hill doesn't make it in my book, but
can I just ask one other question though on that? A while back, I'm not sure if it was this winter or the spring before, there was some extensive damage to some of the property, some of the homeowners down along Worthy Hill. Is this project that we're looking at going to help them alleviate those problems?
Yeah, I don't wanna say the work we're doing this summer is gonna solve it, but we extend, the work that we're doing this summer extends up. You're talking about where it washed into the driveway and the cellar and the backyard and the house. We extended up to put catch basins upstream of that. So unless the flooding was so bad it inundated those drainage structures we're installing this summer, what we're doing this summer will protect those properties at the very bottom of the hill.
But that's got nothing to do with what's in this CIP project.
No, there's
It's
all the way up the hill. You go up there in a good heavy rain and from Sue's house down,
Oh, I
just
know.
below, the water's spraying out of the ground because the pipe has failed all the way down the hill. So it's,
I was telling him about Mike's video of it
Yeah.
percolating during the storm.
yeah, and it just, the whole pipe has collapsed and failed. So it's, the properties all the way down the hill, are still gonna get some damage. At the very bottom, the property that really got slammed, I'm hoping the structures we're putting in will alleviate some of that, because the new drainage system will go from there out.
Okay, so what I just want to clarify, what I'm hearing then is that this project, the money that's in this CIP for that drainage project is not going to impact, it's not anticipated to be an impact on those properties?
The very bottom properties, no. And just, I don't know if your matrix different than mine, but it looks like the CIP group took that money out already
For which one?
for that 440,000.
No.
still in.
It's in.
Because I think at CIP, they had asked why it was double, why it was in the road plan, and you had explained that if you took it out of that, if it was in here, if it stayed in CIP, you would just put another road in, so they did leave it. They left both.
And again, just to put perspective here, I mean, in the year 2012 in CIP, there was a $1.2 million for Mass Road drainage, followed by 2 years later another 1.5. There are significant drainage issues along Mass Road, so these problems are kind of not going away. But
Well, I guess I'm looking at it for that development, and if, with that phasing, because I do have a concern. I mean, even though it's great that there's a bond, but I mean, still, if we have to call the bond to fix the road, I mean, it's like, you fix the road, you spend all this money to do the road, and now you're tearing it up to fix the road again. So if that's the case,
Wait till it's done, and then fix the road.
all right, is there a consensus to kind of defer this one, the Worthley Hill? I'm seeing one head, two heads. Yes. All right.
unless I heard that project was going through, and I haven't heard that.
Well, while you're here, let's talk cemetery, because that was another thing that came up, and is that something, I think Nick mentioned it earlier with the GPS equipment. I'm not saying that we can do the whole thing, but, it appears that DPW can do a vast majority of their project, perhaps with the exception of, the, what do you call that term?
Lots.
The plots,
The
or
layout.
not the layout piece.
Right.
But in terms of the construction of the road and a lot of the, what do you call, grubbing and, the prep work, I would think could be a DPW type project.
We had a question that cemetery hasn't gotten back to us yet, and one was, could we defer the paving of the road? Could we lay out the road with gravel so that we knew, grade it, lay it out with gravel, but not pave it until later on? The question was, could we still pin it if the road wasn't paved? I mean, off the top of my head, I would say yes, but I'm not a cemetery person, so again, I don't know. And again, can DPW lay out the plots? That's probably something that we're gonna have to get an answer to legally versus him tonight being able to say yes or no.
Well, it's very possible, without seeing the layout of what's supposed to be there, it would seem to me that if you got a road going in, and what Carl said before, that they sometimes get a surveyor to come in to just do certain things, it would seem to me that if they did some of this work, and they had, the road is here, I mean, you should be able to get a surveyor to come in with that other thing and
Lay
pick
them
up,
all out.
pick up some of those points, because they're gonna take some of those points. And once they lock into those couple of points, they ought to be able to do that pretty straightforward, I would imagine.
Just roughly, if we could defer the paving, if Carl could do obviously, we wouldn't have a mobilization charge, and if you could do the grading and site work, even if we brought them in to do, it's only $27,000, $28,000 to do a layout, we could roughly cut the project next year in half, from 140 some odd thousand to about 70 something thousand.
Yeah, this is one where I think, I don't think we can really drag our feet on, unfortunately. I think we have to get the ball rolling on this cemetery. I don't think we can be deferring it, and try to be as creative as we can in terms of moving along, but I think it's something that's something doable for your department.
All depends on how empty the crypt is.
I know, but when they were in here a couple of weeks ago, they're 2 years, they say.
I know.
So then next summer would be 1 year, and, all right. What else? Can you fix pools? No, is there anything else for Carl in terms
Just
of?
want to jump back to Worthley and understand what he's saying about the road. Is this something that if you were to alleviate the drainage problems, that you could put in the pipe and then trench in a small piece. Is that something that would buy time till that phase goes and that phase goes that he speaks about, and then you pay? Would that be advisable or an option?
You know, I think what I'd want to do is sit down, which we would typically do anyway, when we sit down and do our road plan list. One of the things we'd evaluate is it worthwhile for us to look at being creative with the pipe, which was and put our resources laying the pipe up the hill, or do we want to put more emphasis into Addison Road? We won't have enough money with the kind of cuts you're talking about tonight. We're not going to have enough money to do all of Addison anyway.
Right.
So it's where do you cut Addison off? Do we go out and try to do as much Addison as we can? Those are going to be judgment calls. And
Addison is 1.3. So why wouldn't,
well, there's also a lot of overlays and everything else that have to be kept up with and done as well. So we wouldn't be able to take that whole 1.5 and say, okay, let's go and do Addison, and that's all we're going to do this year. Not without risking a lot of work that we've already done. So there's going to be a balancing act.
Because you're gonna have to put your priority on your maintenance overlays. 'Cause the maintenance overlays are gonna have to get done, otherwise we don't wanna lose that road that we just put money into.
Because last year we learned that, like, a road like Addison, it can't get worse, although it's horrific. I mean, I don't know, there's certain parts that are like from the farm to the power lines, it's brutal.
Oh, I know.
It's brutal.
Rocks come right
Yeah.
up through the,
But at 1.3, we'd be doing just Addison Road.
Yeah, but I think.
I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't.
I understand, and that would be it, that would be it for the whole town, but I guess what Carl is saying is that we then have to start thinking about, okay, maybe we just do that chunk and fix that one, and then come back the following year and do another chunk, and then overlay, I don't know, I mean, you have to be kind of be creative here,
We did do that with parts of Norman, if I remember right, correct? Well, I mean, I know you're not.
Norman didn't even get that good.
Good,
Norman-
but you thought, that there was a piece of Norman.
Norman got the spray paint can, start here, stop here. There was no digging.
But I'm saying, but then, New Boston Road, isn't there parts of that's not all that great either, and Pleasant Street?
Well, I'm sure you,
Yeah.
you folks get the same
Yeah.
calls I do. I mean,
Right.
you know what we're up against. Get them all the time. When is my road on the list?
This is.
question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead. This is, and I know Phil will probably agree with me, this is the problem when we reduce the road program, because next year also there'll be the large truck, the vac truck, correct? Coming in, and we'll be looking at these same types of issues again, and we'll be backed up 2 or 3 years in the road program of that we've done very minimal work.
and one thing though we wanna bear in mind, what Carl's point was, taking the replacement on the vehicles from 10 to 12, because that's exactly what we wound up into back in 92 with the Max. That fleet got pushed out and got pushed out and got pushed out until couldn't do it anymore. And we don't wanna get into that position again. Don't wanna get into
That was a major lease purchase that we had to
Yeah.
undertake to get caught up.
Yes, Nick?
The CIP reclamation list that you gave to CIP lists 3 roads: Addison, Page Hill, Worthley Hill. Those 3 roads add up to $2,398,000. The entire road plan was $2,499,000, so roughly $100,000 more. If you got a 1.5 million and we took off Page Hill and Worthley Hill, you'd now have over $100,000 besides Addison Road. So why would you not be able to do Addison Road in its entirely and still have the extra road plan money? Because you're going to actually have more not accounted for road plan money than you would under your full road plan, because we're taking those 2 roads off.
And I don't have that in front of me, and you may be right. I mean, when we sit down in the conference room and look through the list, that may be exactly what we figure out. But off the top of my head, I don't remember all that.
But I think what Carl's concern was, when he mentioned that, because that was after he talked about the library and doing some other stuff, so if we keep giving him other things to do that's where that money's it's gonna eat up that money, so that's what we have to be recognized as how much work we're gonna be giving them to.
One of the things that I just wanted to publicly say is that, we've been fighting back and forth about, over the last, 3 or 4 years since I've been on the board, about what should we be doing with our roads, and should we be doing it in-house, should we be farming it out, et cetera. And really, this particular summer has really been quite interesting, because we've done some in-house projects. We've had, most of the stuff has been, farmed out, whether it be the sewer project, or whether it be this drainage project, or, some others. And, my sentiment is, from seeing what our DPW crew did on, say, Tibbetts and Lauren Lane, which I thought they did a great job.
And Montalona.
Yeah, I didn't particularly see that part, and I trust that's the case. Is that I believe that DPW can really successfully manage these small to medium projects. It's when you get to these big ones like an Addison Road, or these large scale deals, is that I don't know if we have the manpower to do it timely and to keep up with it, because you're talking about multiple sets of teams that are working these roads, and the road that might take an independent contractor a summer might take us 2 or a little longer, that type of thing. But these other projects, I was very impressed with how quickly they got in there, they got it done. It seemed to work pretty well. This library deal, I trust the cemetery. I think there's a place for it,
And I was going to add to that, I think we have the capability to do it. The bottleneck that I think we saw that became very apparent this year is the engineering.
Yeah.
So it would be nice if we could take advantage. I mean, no one wants to see the economy the way it is now, but it is what it is. If we could take this opportunity to kind of take a breather and maybe even get not only caught up, but maybe a year ahead in our engineering, so that we're not looking at all of these projects and just try to take some pressure off the engineering side.
Well, and just not to air DPW dirty laundry all over the place, but there's a lot of stuff we don't get to that we should be getting to, and it's becoming apparent. Things like roadside mowing. We haven't done roadside mowing in a couple of years, and as I drive around town, that is a glaring problem that we need to face in the next couple of years. So there is plenty of things. It's not like we take a breather from the road plan, suddenly DPW can sit and play cribbage all day. There's plenty for us to get caught up on maintenance-wise, that my guys look around at those kind of maintenance things, and it's like a little sore thumb to them too, because they take pride in their roots, and those are things that we haven't been able to get to. So, I think that there is some good that could come from all of this, and I agree with what Scott's synopsis was. We have the technical ability, but unfortunately we have a whole bunch of other responsibilities that pull us out of a job. I have no doubt that if I could put a crew in and stay dedicated to that job for 2 or 3 months, we could do any size job.
But
Fine,
unfortunately,
we have all
you're
this other stuff.
responsible. You're the first responders for infrastructure,
Right.
and you have to be reactive many times. And if
Exactly.
you were totally in proactive mode, it would be a different story. But
Right.
Unfortunately, that just doesn't happen.
No.
But I think a credit to your crews that the projects that you've worked on most recently, and in the past too. I'm just saying, but it was very glaring, I think, to me, that there is a place for us doing things, within our own department, where the scope and the size of the project makes sense. And I think, the ones that I rattled off are prime examples. And I think some of the things that we're talking about here with the cemetery and other things, library, parking lot, these are some of the things that we can tackle and do the job well, And, it's not, I think, for some people, I've heard this from residents, everybody, there's no easy way, and even some of the issues that we're running into with some of these contractors, you have those, and then you can go all one way or all the other, and you're going to have issues no matter what. So
Tough business.
yeah. Anything else on the DPW side? We kind of, consensus was to push off the Worthley Hill to go with the 2 vehicles, 1.5 on the road program. What else did we?
We have to
talked
get some
about
answers
the
back from the
We
cemetery.
have to get some answers back on the cemetery, but Is there anything else on the DPW end?
Well, the answer on the cemetery, is that going to directly affect anything in CIP? I just don't have my matrix in front of me.
If we don't have to pave,
Right.
that's about a 60,000.
Is the paving part of the 148.5?
Oh, okay.
And the cemetery trustees said they were going to check into that.
Yeah, no, I know, I just
Get
didn't
back to
have,
us.
we're not having that matrix right in front of me. I wasn't sure how it was
It's
gonna
about a 40,000
Did they get,
difference
yeah,
there.
while you're here, did they get their lawnmowers? Wasn't there some issue that they talked about 2 weeks ago about a lawnmower that was like, that wet the
We're gonna
bed or
get a-
something?
we're
What?
gonna get a lawnmower,
You
yeah.
got it? Okay.
I have one question. Carl, you have CIP in front of you, right?
Yeah.
Could you look in the 2010 adopted budget and point out for me where your drainage and your compactor are?
Drainage, the compactor's not in here. That
Okay.
was not, oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry, it is. It is.
What
land-
page is the compactor on?
It's
approved
under,
column?
it's under solid waste, it's line 166.
166.
It was a trailer and compactor.
Recycle trailer compactor.
80,000, okay, got that one.
And your other one was,
Drainage, where's that?
drainage is under drainage projects, which is,
It's not going to be on which one do you have, Sue?
yeah, it looks like, I think they eliminated it right off the matrix.
No, the one on 810, you're not going to see it on either of those.
Yeah,
On
they-
this one.
they-
You're not going
Why
to see
would-
sidewalk.
Why
or-
wouldn't we see it, because it was appropriated in 2010. I'm coming up with a difference between 2010 and what, that's approved in our budget and what's on the here.
What, oh, you have a different amount?
Well,
About
and
a
what,
$500,000.
and what happens is
More or
when
less.
they struck,
We approved $500,000 more than what's reflected on the CIP chart.
yeah,
approximately.
what needs to happen is I saw the draft budget. We gotta make sure
Bless you,
that
bless
those
you.
numbers,
Don't drop,
right,
And-
follow their way up to.
exactly. The other items I can't seem to find on this, under the 2010 column, those are the two TVW ones, but you showed me with a compactor, I just didn't see that one. How about, the town hall roof and clock tower? That's 60,000, and I don't see that in there, and that was approved, and it's in the budget.
That's on 176 and 177.
176. That's revenues. They planned on the
Oh.
revenues, but not the appropriation.
Sue, what do you have for the net town total?
That's a nice
Yeah.
swing.
I'm just looking at the,
2010 adopted.
I'm looking at 2010 adopted budget, just gross appropriations next.
On gross appropriation.
So it's right above, it's on page 5, right above the revenues. Total town vehicles and projects. It's reflected as 2.177. And on our budget report, if you look at it, it's 2.538. It's about $400,000.
And on this one, which was printed July 15th, which has sidewalks and drainage in it, the net is 2225.
Yeah, there are other things missing.
I see that same $1.5 million you're talking about. Just looking back at what was submitted versus what's here.
Well, I'm saying the gross is probably off. It should be $2,593,326 is what was appropriated in 2010.
Could you repeat that number, 2 million?
$2,593,326
Was approved.
approved for 2010.
Well, I think we gotta get our arms around those numbers, clearly.
The other one I don't see in here is server virtualization that was approved this year for 55,000. And the big one is
What's the
fire
Barnard?
communication
Oh,
one for
right.
192,678. And these are dropped off.
Was the Barnard land purchase in here?
No, because that was a special article.
article, okay.
Right, that wasn't in CIP. So you had special articles last year
Right.
totaling,
Well, it was over $1 million because But one didn't get approved. The three vehicles didn't get approved at 980,000 or something.
Yeah, $500,000 in special articles, 512,514, that was approved.
Right. All right, so we gotta clean this thing up.
Yeah.
Anything else? For Carl?
Just an update.
He has the Real Housewives of New Jersey that he's
Waiting.
looking to go home.
Prospect Street signs one way and the East Union Street sidewalk.
Yeah, Prospect Street, I was glad you sent me the email because we ordered those, whatever it was, that had been approved. We called the sign shop to find out where they are, and they never got the fax. So hopefully by the end of the week, we'll have those. They're going to expedite them. The East Union Street sidewalk is on our list when we have a patch crew out. We're going to patch that. And then there's some homeowner issues that they need to
Right.
resolve. But it's on the list to patch when we get a crew out. And the third one was, that was it?
Yeah, I talked with Sue earlier about, that was Spring Street.
Okay.
Talked about.
All right.
Oh, all kinds of activity on that one.
Is there anything else for Carl while he's here?
Thank you.
Well, thank you all.
Thank you, Carl.
Always fun.
You're welcome to stay.
This would be a natural time for us to take a break
Yeah.
for 10 minutes. All right, so we'll come back at about 10 minutes to 8. That'd be 7:50, Steve.
Thank you. And are we gonna get a new spreadsheet
Yes.
sometime this week? I mean, who does it go to since it was prepared by Steve?
Short break. Next up is we're going to go into our town administrator's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your weekly meeting schedule is in your packet. I won't go through them, but just wanted to note that the Lynchville-Danis Park water hookup and the Moset paving reclamation project information meetings are scheduled for tomorrow night at the high school. These were not posted as selectmen's meetings because these are typically run by DPW, but you're more than invited to attend. And the rest are your regular meetings that are listed. For the consensus folder tonight, you have AP warrants. And I was asked prior to the meeting to remove the employee status reports at this time.
Yeah, and there was the reason for that is that they were for library new hires, and we have no jurisdiction over hiring library personnel. That's the library trustees.
Yeah.
So that was the reason why.
So you would like to change that format and have library trustees sign off on these employee status
Yeah,
reports?
because we don't have any.
But is there a reason why we used to do it?
I've questioned that for some time.
I don't think we have any statutory authority.
We
They
don't.
do.
We don't.
They
To
do.
hire.
However, we would like to get a copy of it because we process payroll.
Payroll, yeah. They do the hiring and firing over there.
No, I know, but I'm just trying to remember if there was a reason why we did it, that's all. I'll try to think about it.
I'll play the devil's advocate. If for some reason this board voted no,
You want to do that just to see what happens?
well, I'm just saying, it's already,
I'm
it's
only
already been
kidding.
approved over there. People are already working. It's
Yeah.
kind of just redundant that it comes here for us.
Okay.
Did you finish your announcements on the third bullet?
Nope. In 2008 and 2009 abatement, it was just a correction of paperwork. You voted on that last week.
Can we go back to meetings for a second, if it's okay?
Meetings? Sure.
I will not be able to make the EDC meeting tomorrow, because obviously I'll be at the high school. If there's anyone who would like to grab that, that's fine. If not, just let Derek know I will be there, so they won't wait.
Okay.
Anybody else make it?
I didn't see any hands raised.
All right.
I intend to go to the Moset one, but not the water hookup.
So
Okay.
maybe, okay. Maybe you might be a possibility.
EDC starts at
10.
6:30.
6:30, and they serve food at that one.
Don't tell him that. There's no
Donuts. Okay. Oh, let's go to the, you're good with that?
I'm just saying I can't
Okay.
make it.
The consensus, I need a motion to accept the consensus folder absent the employee status
moved.
reports from the library. Seconded by,
Seconded.
okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, 5-0.
Thank you. And the assessor recommends an intent of timber cut on map 7, lots 86 and 94, and map 8, lots 22 and 22A.
A motion to accept.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Selectman Fournier seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 5-0.
And Goffstown Main Street program has some requests for you. They would like to know who will be the captain of the giant pumpkin for the Board of Selectmen in the regatta.
Is that like, if they grow the pumpkin bigger or smaller, based upon who's the captain?
I don't think they're looking real big this year.
Who would like to do that?
I won't be here.
Bill? As the senior selectman?
I will be here.
Steve?
You will be there cutting the pumpkin with me, right?
Might not, but Selectman Fournier, excellent choice.
Okay, I will go.
We'll have to have a workshop to determine the costume and Rain Man.
I was going to pick in Frosty again.
Frosty.
Frost on the pumpkin.
And the next one was the request for the art show-off, October 15th through December 10th. That's where they display.
So moved.
Yes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Selectman Fournier, you and I?
I said aye.
You're an aye, that's 5-0.
Okay, now you have a follow-up on political signs. Last week, the board asked who else could be charged with removal of political signs from town property, and according to RSA 664-17, town maintenance or law enforcement personnel can remove political signs on town property.
Question.
Mhm.
Town maintenance, does that mean DPW?
Yeah, that's usually who the state assigns to it, to remove signs in the state right-of-way.
Which they're not really doing, but
Well, they do when they cut the
Yeah.
grass or
Yeah.
something, if it's
I saw
interfering.
grass cut on a state highway today, and all the signs are gone.
Yeah.
All right, but I guess the reason why I asked, so that leaves two possibilities, DPW or PD. And who would we have then that would coordinate? Because I would hate the police cruiser to go by and say, oh, DPW's gonna pick it up. DPW go by and say, oh,
Right.
PD's gonna pick it up.
Well, I think the Board of Selectmen would determine who.
But
is
we
the-
meet on a weekly basis, I guess that's, well,
I would think, I mean, my personal opinion would be that it would probably be a DPW would be the first line of defense, but certainly if there was a police officer that was stopped or something that, I mean, I'm not saying go out of your way, but if they were close by and they saw it, that they would get it if that was the case, but.
well, I don't know necessarily if that's the way that they operate. Because unless they're directed at their staff meeting
Right.
before when shift changes
Right.
about it in political season, I mean, now that has to become something that they have as, is that gonna be part of the daily routine for PD, PD? I guess the reason why I was saying is that it would seem to me that it might be better off to be coordinated through a particular department or a particular person.
Would Dave be considered maintenance personnel?
Yes.
Maybe we just assign it to one person.
But I guess the question, though, that I have, I understand the assignment, but I guess, the question that I have, so, okay, fine, so it's gonna be Dave. So now, this is something that Dave has to take upon himself, that he has to be aware of all the political seasons, that, you know, that I gotta go and do that. I mean, he might be down at PD working for 3 days, he's not up here to see these signs. So, I mean, it seemed to me that somehow it needs to be coordinated, either through administration, someplace, to say, at some point, pick up the telephone and say, I need either DPW or PD to go over, there's 3 signs on the common here that need to be picked up.
I would just think that if it was, say, Dave, that as he's doing his normal maintenance in between buildings, he would just pull over if he sees them, and he would just do it that way.
I just don't wanna have signs there and people say, gee, that's Dave's responsibility. They don't get up, and then, you know, Dave says, I've been working 3 days down at PD.
But if it does, it happens, I mean.
We're only enforcing right now municipal buildings and
Right.
all the islands
Which
that
is-
are
aren't
owned
that-
by the
right.
town.
Which is only a few areas, I mean,
Right.
it's not.
We're not getting into measuring right-of-ways.
Right.
Question?
Are we required, because I noticed in here that they're sending letters to the campaign offices, and do we have to notify each campaign office, or do we have to publicly post we publicly post where political signs can be picked up if they're taken off of town property? I mean, we may not have many now, but come March or at some other period of time, we may have quite a few. And if we're gonna be chasing down addresses to mail letters to all of these candidates.
Well, they're all provided at the town clerk's office
Well,
for state.
I question the same thing. Why are we consuming Derek's time sending letters out?
If we just put a public notice
It's
saying,
one thing to collect it.
Right.
Single notice.
single
Yeah.
notice.
Or even then, couldn't it just be at point of when they actually register for the candidacy, just explain the situation, that if they put it
Well,
there?
that's for local, I think that happens, but I think what I've seen is the ones that more the, state level, whether it be governor or congressman,
Federal,
that you
yeah.
have people who are working a campaign, and they're just putting signs up everywhere,
Well, they know.
and they do know, and I think that it would just be, you're putting up at your own peril, and if it's on town land, it gets picked up, and
I don't think they worry
that's
about
that,
that.
yeah, I don't think they worry either.
So what kind of single notice are you thinking of, Nick?
Well, I don't know, I'm looking at the RSA and I don't see anything that says we have to notify them. It just says, political advertising removed prior to election day by state, city, or town. Maintenance or law enforcement shall be kept for 1 week at a place designated by state, city, town, so that the candidate may retrieve the items.
To me, I think we're making a hell of a molehill here.
Just
is-
say
is-
they're here
is
at
that-
town hall if you want
Yeah,
to pick them up.
and there's, every
But how-
candidate has emails
how do we
for
get
crying
that
out
out?
loud. An
Just
email.
by email?
Send an email.
Okay.
Most of them have a website. Every single one of them probably has a website, and there's an email contact, and just have the same message, and you just send it off. Done. And just keep it. It's probably send the same one every time. It's generic. So, are we okay with? I want to try to deal with what you were saying, Phil. I mean, if it's going to be left to kind of one person, and if that person can't do it, then Sue would then coordinate having DPW
Well, that's
or
what I was
somebody else
getting
do it.
at, is that
Right.
there's be somebody that
They
at least
can't, a backup,
coordinates
right,
that.
yeah.
And if Dave's out, he's away, he's on vacation or something,
Yeah.
and
Then somebody else,
we
then,
need
Town hall.
somebody that's been authorized to call PD or
right,
call
town
DPW.
administration would do that.
Okay, that's where I was coming.
May I
You're
step,
welcome.
may I step backward one step? Why are we discussing this? Was it because the zoning enforcement officer is overworked on this one issue?
I've raised it because there's signs everywhere,
Yes.
and I think it's, you're a local candidate, and you can't put a sign up without, getting in trouble, but everybody and their brother can put them up on town property, and they don't belong there.
Actually,
But-
wasn't it from the garden club, they were here saying someone had put a sign up?
Yeah.
I read that in
So-
the
But
minutes, yeah,
I've
I
not-
wasn't here that.
I've not had any, have you had an indication that our zoning enforcement officer's been overstressed because of all the signs? And
I think what I heard the chairman say is he'd like to see that resource used for
Yeah, more
higher
important things.
more
priority.
important things.
Right.
And I-
Okay,
yeah, I
okay,
didn't think
that's,
he's spending time
Right.
running around for.
I agree with that analysis. I just wanted to bring it out.
And who else
Why?
could do it? Yeah.
Thank you.
Next is zip code.
Yes, Brian Rose is aware of the issues with zip code, and he'd like to develop a plan to meet with the neighborhoods with the 03102 zip code to express the town's concerns and to work with them and maybe get a petition going. Because as you recall, the post office did not want to reconsider this till 2010, and he'd like to initiate a plan and bring it to you for your approval.
Could I make a recommendation?
That you find your box and give
I
it to us?
found
Yeah.
it. I offered that and Dave didn't want it.
No, you said you were
Found the
looking.
box?
for
No,
it.
I said I found it, and I
Black
said, and no, please don't bother bringing it in. My suggestion was for him to contact Felix Pelchat
Mm-hmm.
and have a discussion with that, and I will forward my zip code information on to Brian Rose, just so that
Okay.
I know what he's gonna look at. The names aren't gonna mean anything to him, but at least when he comes across the person, he might say, oh, I read his name in Phil's box.
Brian just didn't want to invest any time here if the board wasn't going to support him moving forward with this.
Well, as you would suspect, I'm in favor of him moving forward on this project. And I'm glad that he's working towards that aim.
I'm just not crazy about the two separate zip codes, because I know what's gonna happen. If Goffstown, Pinardville gets a separate zip code, They will never, ever merge, and it'll always be there forever.
The likelihood of the post office merging that into one office is doubtful.
Well,
with
depends
the
on the
financial-
election that's coming up with senators and congressmen.
Well, with their
They would-
finances,
They
they're
would need
in the
a
red
new building to replace the present
to handle all the routes in
045
one.
building.
When did we last request the realigning?
Over 10 years
10
ago.
years later.
Okay, because it doesn't require a petition.
No, it doesn't.
The municipality can just
But
request it.
they've been down this road several times, and politically, the post office does not want to move forward unless there's a majority of residents with the 03102 who are willing to change to another zip code.
And I'll forward you, this is a document from the post office on that process. They're going to mail out a
The
questionnaire
surveys,
to
yeah.
everyone in that affected area, even if we give them a petition. So they're going to do a vote.
Why bother?
Well,
So I guess why don't we just make the request and
See what the response is.
see what the
the
response
problem
is.
with the survey, and I would be more than happy to share the raw results of last survey on this issue. You read the answer, whether it's yes or no, and then you read the explanation, and sometimes you wonder how that explanation got to the yes or no answer. Like, no, I don't want to change my zip code to 03045 because once someone sent me a letter, my invitation to my 50th reunion, and it never got to me. I missed my reunion. Or
I don't want to have to go up to the post
Post
office up
office.
there.
to pick it up. And these were not issues. That's why I'm saying a survey is not a good way to dealing with this. You need to deal with this at a meeting with these people. And obviously, there's too many to do at one time, so neighborhood meetings would be, and Brian has done this before in Arizona when he was out there, neighborhood
And I
meetings.
agree with that. I was just questioning why we would do a petition.
Well, it would show that they understood and that they were in favor of it, to see where you're going with it.
I agree with Nick. I'm in favor of him holding meetings, but not a petition.
Not a petition?
This board was, this close to sending a letter out a year ago.
Mhm.
And now that we've found a missing carton of archives, we'll be closer.
So you found the box?
Did your box say,
Okay.
did your box say it was in favor of this?
So,
Yeah. What was the,
Basically, meet with people and
I'll
discuss
add
all
to,
the issues.
I think I would add
Yeah,
to
was the
Brian.
box favorable?
gotta read it.
Was the box favorable?
Was the
That's what
box
I wanna
favorable?
know.
Seriously?
Yeah, what was the
It had the
last-
wrong zip code on it.
No, was it, back then, was it favorable
As far as what? What
to,
was what?
to having wasn't favorable to having the same zip code as Goffstown, was it?
Yeah,
It
that's
was.
that's what it was for. It was to
Right.
have the 03045,
Right.
one zip code.
So the magic box said that the residents of Carnarvon would like to have shared the same zip code.
That's what the goal was back then.
That was the goal. That wasn't the results of the survey.
So the only difference between then and now is that it would have a
think more-
unique zip code.
Yeah, well, that
So it'd
difference,
be
and I think
Goffstown,
it's an
but it-
education process, that,
Right.
one, you don't have to change all your
Change.
addresses for 18 months, they're gonna give you 18 months to do, and answer these questions that people have. Because I'm not sure there's full understanding.
Yeah, one of the questions that's gonna come up is, okay, so if I have this new zip code, and I come home and there's a package for me, where do I go to get it? Where do I go? Where's my post office?
The-
Those are the questions that need to be
All right.
answered.
The same one they go to.
There was a FYI, a reason why I said in this, we had a whole list of FYI, and you're gonna have the same questions and answers now that you had then. The only difference, instead of being 03045, it's gonna be 03112 maybe.
All right.
Which is serviced out of the same facility they're using now.
But you're gonna go through the same process with the same FAQs.
How much, David, what do you envision in terms of time and resources for this endeavor? When we say meetings, how much time of Brian's time? I'm starting to
We're
look
busy in
at,
the planning department, we've got all these applications coming in.
It sounds like it would have to be an evening meeting, and it would be, I'm not sure what Brian has proposed, but it sounds to me like evening meetings, and he would send out letters to half the community for one evening and half the other evening.
I'm just saying that sometimes, we have a concept, we have an idea, and then at the end, we realize, oh, wow, Brian spent 185 hours working on this, and then we decided to scrap it at the end or something. I'm just trying to,
Well,
is this a
lem-
mission-critical thing for our community, or should
Our fear
Brian's...
is what we can't capture, and we can't capture lost revenue. We don't know how
That
much lost revenue we
That is
have.
the question, that's always, that we
No.
spoke about
Yeah.
last time.
And,
What's
and
the revenue and where, and
Yeah.
I agree with that.
I guess
For
where
motor
I was
vehicles?
coming from,
That's
instead
one.
of,
Yeah.
instead of having Brian have to reinvent the wheel, we had all that information done. We had sheets already printed up with all of that. We've been through all of that. And all he'd have to do was just tweak a few of the words in it
Okay,
for what he's doing.
I don't know why I'm on this whole resource optimization thing, but I mean, I'm okay if we go ahead and do this, but I just want to know that he's going to commit X amount of hours to this, and then if it goes beyond that, then he's coming back to us, because we do have to get a handle of how much time we dedicate to different projects, and
Well, maybe he could also enlist the help of Felix and others who were concerned, that lived down in that area, that were concerned about the zip code issue. And maybe it can be a team effort, so
Right.
it's not
That's
all
where I was
falling on
going.
Brian.
That's where I was
Okay.
going.
all right, what does the board want to do? You're obviously you want to be part of it, and I
Yes.
know where you stand.
I would-
I'm okay with it. I just
I
want to
would
make sure that we
authorize
put it in a box that we don't make this like a number one priority, or at least allocate resources that it's such. But I don't know. Phil, you seem to be in favor of moving ahead.
I prefer one zip code, but
All right. What do you guys think?
I would just say the question always to me is, what's the revenue regarding if the zip code is the same as Goffstown? I don't think residents or people there probably give that much thought one way or the other. But if we're forsaking revenues, then the question would be, is it worth all the time and the effort? And it possibly might be.
Nick, what do you?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Proceed. Is there? You want to put
No
a?
petition. Just forget the petition idea and just,
Well, unless you're going to petition everyone in that area, I mean, which you're going to try to reach with your meetings.
Right.
Some education, but I don't see what a petition's going to do.
it's more public awareness and answering their concerns.
Petition would answer their concerns,
No,
or
not the petition, no, these
public
meetings.
Right.
These meetings would,
I don't have a problem with
I,
that.
I have no problem with the meetings, and I'll probably help them with it. And I
Excellent.
think both Brian and I would like to read the archives on that, too.
Yeah, again, I guess in my opinion, it'd be nice to kind of get a sense of where the Bernardville community stands as early as possible. So if you have a few meetings and the tea leaves are such that it's 50-50, then
and then request a survey from,
well, no, then I think
Postal
it's,
Service?
we gotta decide, do we wanna keep going ahead and spending resources and doing this stuff? So, that's just my take. I mean, if seems like we
no,
can
I'm saying
articulate.
if the majority of the people down there would buy into having,
Right,
a
then
different
I
setback.
think it's one thing, but if you're going to these meetings and they're like, no, not for it, I'm happy the way that it is now, then I just don't wanna see us spending a lot of time and energy on it.
I'd also like to see the business community
Yeah, that's especially
discussed,
important.
because I know this board made a decision a while ago not to pursue our own Chamber of Commerce, but to have the Bernardville area join in with the Manchester Chamber of Commerce. And I think we send mixed messages when we're now saying, okay, we want you to be part of the Manchester Chamber of Commerce, but your address is now going to be Goffstown.
but that
Well,
Chamber of Commerce
3045.
is for every business.
I understand, but they may identify with, and that's what I'm saying, I think we need to discuss with the business
There
owners.
are many businesses who like the Manchester address, so they feel as if they get a bigger exposure by having a Manchester address. So,
I just don't want them ignored.
Yeah.
At
Okay.
least discuss.
okay,
with
I
business
think
owners.
we're good there, and I assume that Selectman Pierce will be the selectman.
Good assumption.
All right.
the torch carrier.
Okay, sorry for
All I had.
All right. Let's go with. Okay, we've gone through CIP. We went through a lot of that.
we have to update the
We're gonna
2010
We're gonna
column.
update that, right. And I think, is there anything else on there that we wanted to see changed? I wanna talk about these pools for a second. Is there any monies to do one pool this fall, or just to, and I'm told that maybe you can shed more light on that, but they're in rough shape.
Yes, they need work, especially the one at Roy. They were filling that every day.
Or we haven't determined if the resurfacing will affect that.
Well, they did bring out a professional to look at it.
Well, you're gonna be, let's defer this till next week,
I'll meet
because
the
you're
other
gonna,
ones.
you're gonna have your Parks and Rec meeting, so.
But either way, the pools will need work, and the question will be, are we going to go forward with one pool, or two pools, or no pools?
Okay. All right. Let's now go to the 2011 draft default budget, and that is 7B 2. So that's a chart that administration has put together, and the bottom line demonstrates a default budget of $211,980 above the current year, which is largely attributable to personnel-related costs in all of our departments. What is not on there, however, which is the unknown, is our insurance, medical, group medical, those plans. So that number,
They are meeting on October
LGC.
14th to set rates.
All right. One of the things that's come up with some constituents is they've asked, when was the last time the town shopped health insurance on the open market to make sure that LGC was giving us a competitive price?
That's a good question. Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you. I know when vendors have come in here and they found out that we have LGC for health insurance, they say, oh, we can't compete with that, but we'd be happy to give you prices on your short-term, long-term disability life insurance.
Now, is that something that,
Really, if you're going to,
does that be RFP?
it'd be an RFP process, but I'm not sure you'd have time for next year, but the renewals are for January 1st. And the only true, well, I shouldn't say that, but if you're looking for an all lines, because you get all your lines from them, if you're looking to get those, savings from buying all lines from one vendor, the only other one I can think of that does this for the public sector is Primex.
No, there's no private firm that would take on a group? Really? I don't know.
For all lines?
Let's just say it's not all lines. Could
Yes,
we a
that
la
was my
carte?
question.
Could we a la carte some through LGC and not just do? So let's say we just didn't do medical and dental or something.
It's like when you buy your homeowners and your
Right.
So the
car
LGC
insurance, you get a reduced rate because you're packaging, bundling things.
When the LGC puts out a rate, you're saying they give a multi-line discount, but they.
Right.
So if we, like he said, if we just want to do dental, if we don't hold any other lines, then there will be no, the discount changes.
Correct, it's based on your experience.
We're sure of
before.
that.
My understanding, I think what they reduce is if you buy your health insurances and your property liability insurances through them and your workers' comp, then they reduce the workers'
Right.
comp by 20%.
Right, there was a
So there is a discount.
Yeah, and they also had in liability, if you had liability and you had the workers' comp, there was a discount.
See, I know
I know it's 20%.
part of
Sure,
me,
Off
we're-
workers'
so we're,
comp.
we're
Yeah.
sure on that then.
Yeah.
I mean, part of me says that we should put this out to bid or to see what else. At least you're taking the pulse here. It's a significant cost. I believe our benefits are what, $5 million or something, right? How much do we?
I don't know offhand, but
I had a.
this would be your 3 years are up. You signed that trim agreement for 3 years, and the 3 years are up for that multi-line discount. So you would be up to re-sign that for next year if you go ahead with that.
Did I hear you correctly? You're saying the insurance was $5 million?
Well, I'm just trying to,
I
I'm
don't
trying
know
to,
what it is.
That seems,
I mean, I'm saying you have a group plan that is, I'm probably wrong, Steve.
yeah, I mean, it just seems high.
Yeah,
That's what I'm just-
but if you have a group plan that's $18,000 to $20,000, you know, it does add up pretty quick. I thought I saw somewhere that was a spreadsheet that I had it on my work computer from last year, and we were figuring some things out. But I guess where I'm going at is I remember seeing something last year that if there was a 17% increase in healthcare, that it would be an increase of like $200 and something thousand to our budget. So even if it's $1 million, I don't know. I mean, you're talking about a lot of money.
No, I don't debate that.
There's also, and I haven't received, and maybe you have because you're in the insurance business, but I'm still waiting to see how the definition of grandfathered plans is under the Obamacare. That's why they're advising you not to change insurances until all of this shakes out.
Yeah, just for the record, I don't work in the health insurance business. I work in the homeowners claim
Oh, okay.
side. So I don't have, I mean, do I read things in trade publications? Yes, and I've read the same thing, but I don't, so I'm not selling and I'm not buying it. So I just want everybody to know that.
Okay.
Just for let the record be clear.
In the Goffstown News, in the article, the school district, when Keith Allard mentioned a reduction in
Yes.
health insurance, now they have they have the same health insurance as us.
They had a reduction? Well, they're in the July group. so-
Well, that's what I was gonna say, it's a different year, I think.
Yeah, they're in the July group, we're in the
But-
January group.
But it's possible though, and I'm not sure because it's possible, even though they're in a different, they're 6 months off on the fiscal year, you could still have the insurance premiums based on an offset year.
Could you give them a call and just say, okay, we're not going to hold you to this, but they know.
Who?
LGC.
We already contacted them. They won't do anything before the rates are set. And
I understand that, but they know where the rates are kind of going. They're not going to give
They
you
told us what
exact.
the range of the rate increase in
Right.
the July group, and it was very wide. I mean, it went all the way up to 23%, but then there were some towns that were only like at 8%. So it was a wide range because it's based on your experience. If you're in the large group, if you're in the small group, it's just in that.
Because ours also includes the retirees.
But then we don't have that many. We really don't have that many retirees
I'm
that are
just
still
saying
in the
that
plan.
that
It's a
they're in.
factor.
Yeah.
It's a factor.
They're in there too.
And there's no way of us merging. We couldn't be in the same pool as, say, the school district.
I'm not sure you'd want to be. I'm not sure if their rates are any more favorable than ours.
No, I say that because it's less, I mean, anytime that the law of, the basic principle of insurance is spreading the risk. The larger the pool, the greater opportunities you have to spread your risk. So if you have 100 people, all it takes is a couple of folks, and it can alter your experience. If you have 1,000 people, it's just more statistically, I think it's been more beneficial the larger the pool that you have. So, but when you break it up at 100 employees here, 300 here, it's kind of tough.
Wasn't that the purpose of the LGC, is that you're pulling these people?
Right. But why are they? But there's
So
pooling,
that's
but there's
why I'm
really
wondering why
not.
that-
You've got
so-
these
That's why I'm
small
wondering
groups.
why
If
you-
we were still in the under 100 group, our rates would be much higher.
Right.
Because you're taking on also all those small towns' exposures. And so if they don't have wellness committees and they don't promote wellness, their experience may be higher.
I apologize, and I guess where I don't understand is that I thought the purpose of going through the LGC was to pool these,
You are pool. You're,
but yet they still have
Subgroups.
tiers within,
there
or
are two
subgroups.
tiers.
Two
There's
tiers?
the under 100 and the over 100. And the
100.
over 100, your experience gets to place a factor. It's not solely,
When you
your
say
rates
your
aren't
experience,
solely.
which it means is your usage, correct?
Yes.
And we are in the over 100, is that fair
Yes.
to say? Okay. And when it comes to usage, not asking what our usage is, but is that, once again, it gets broken down into several tiers, or, I mean, how does that play in?
That's a complicated formula, how they come to their rates, and your experience is only one factor. The whole pool's experience is another factor, and then there's the person to talk to on this would have been Bob Wheeler. He was on that health trust for
Yeah, 'cause
years
I was on
and was
health trust, I was
involved
on
with
PLT.
rate setting.
Well, that's something we can do, is we can bring someone from Health Trust out here, you know, we've done it before,
Mhm.
you know, to have.
Maybe Wendy Parker can come down.
It's not a bad idea. It's a big,
Big part of the,
it's a big part of it, and it'll be a nice
I can
thing.
get you the
to-
numbers of exactly how much it is for each of the insurance lines that we buy from them.
Right, and it would also be a nice thing to invite the budget committee to, you know, and any library trustee, whoever, you know, wants to attend it, because it's a huge cost. So we digressed a little bit, but, Nick, you wanted to add something?
Just a quick question, going, if I look at this draft default adjustments, so we're looking at 211,990. If each of these departments, and I'm just playing a hypothetical here, were to reduce their operating lines by these amounts, then theoretically we would come in at a zero increase budget? So we don't have the health numbers, I understand that.
Correct. Some are reductions.
Correct, like Parks and Rec, CIP.
What else was I gonna say? My other question, that while we're on the insurance subject, is same thing with property insurance. I mean, have we ever tried to shop that out?
When we started bundling, it was a 3-year commitment, and we've been in, I don't know, three-year commitments, so we haven't done it at least in 9 years.
I mean, I think we should be shopping around. I mean, at least we can say that that's the best price, best bang for the buck. Without doing that, it just seems like we're always locked into LGC, and I don't know if it's the most, you know,
I'm not
competitive
sure
thing.
you have the time, and I say that because we're in contract negotiations, and we've already put forward health insurance plans in those negotiations.
Not for property insurance.
No, for health insurance.
I think we start with property insurance then. I mean, that could be a barometer for us to then want to tackle the health insurance piece next year, but,
In workers' comp?
yeah. What does everybody else think? I mean, we put out all these other things out to bid. I mean, these are big costs.
I understand what you're saying, but you have to realize also that LGC is created by the municipalities. It's created by us, and these packages are put together specifically for the needs of communities. And some of the things, when you're talking about PLT, for example, I'll give you one example. Over at Grassmere,
What?
property liability.
Oh, okay.
Over at Grassmere Town Hall, when the Grange existed, the Grange had an umbrella that all the other organizations that used that facility came under their umbrella. That's the way the Grange was established. When the Grange no longer met there was an issue with, there was no longer any insurance over there. So the town had to do something, because groups are meeting there, but there's no longer any insurance. So anybody who met there had to have insurance.
Buy their own, right.
So this wasn't an issue that wasn't only unique to Goffstown, because the same thing happens to all municipalities.
Right.
So this had come up, and LGC, PLT at the time, structured a program where that could be, those things could be covered, because it's a municipal building. Now, go someplace else for property insurance. It's not the same property insurance that you have in a business that you have in a municipality.
And I understand that. I guess I think it's just due diligence on our part if we're spending this type of money to it. I mean, if we haven't done it in 9 years, to go out and just, if it comes back and we say this is what we want coverage, the exact same coverage that we have right now, and then if other people bid on it, you'll at least see what the price is. I mean, we can then go back to the community and say, hey, guess what? We're getting the best bang for our buck because these other insurance companies were 5, 10, 15, 20% higher than what we're paying, and for less coverage. But I mean, I'm hearing it way too much, saying, how come you're not shopping your insurance? And I don't know, I just don't see harm in it.
Maybe shopping the insurance isn't the question that you're really looking for. I think maybe why is it that the insurance that we have is the correct insurance for us to carry it?
But you'll be able to, I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you because I understand the comprehensiveness of the coverage that we have, but when you put it out to an RFP and you're asking for the same exact coverage, you're going to learn very quickly if they can price it that way. Do they even have policies that are that encompassing? And at least we can then go to our community and say, yep, we've done
Looking
this.
for a change within policies, looking for
A pulse check to see if, I don't know.
a
Just
rate,
due
you're just
diligence.
looking for a rate comparison.
Yeah.
Kind of like what we did with DPW when we were talking about the recycling and how we were transferring it. In the end, it came down to that we were doing it the right way, and it was cost efficient, and you kind of move on.
I mean, I don't want to, if the board doesn't want to go this route, I mean, listen, we that's how we
Don't
work. I
misunderstand me, I'm
mind.
not saying to
be
answer your,
offended by it.
but I'm saying, I guess, if you look at some of the things, perhaps exactly what we have is covered.
Right.
Maybe if you take a look at that, looking at it, you're looking to say, wow.
Right, like personally, when we got back from Janice, I don't know, months ago, when I asked about, can we have a higher deductible plan? And it was, well, LGC doesn't offer it. I'm like, all they have is $1,000 deductible on property. And it's like, wow. I mean, I would think that municipalities would be able to shoulder a larger deductible, or at least give them the opportunity to select one in exchange for a lower premium. But they don't even do that. So if we were to, put it out to bid and ask for what are the different price points at different, deductibles, I don't think it hurts us, and it'll either validate or invalidate what their pricing is.
You asked me before, how much do we spend on insurance? I can tell you budget-wise, like benefit line, that includes health insurance, dental insurance, short-term disability, long-term disability, and life insurance. And I had asked Linda to give me a rough guess of how much a 10% increase would equal, and she said about $169,000. So we must be spending $1.69 million on those.
Okay. All right. Okay, so from what I'm hearing, the consensus is that we will proceed with an RFP on the property side, but not property liability side, but not on any health insurance side. It's too late to do that
Right.
now.
I
Okay.
would say it is. Just property insurance right now.
Well, do you want property and liability, or that's?
Oh, property liability.
Property
same thing.
liability, yeah.
Yeah, I was then wondering,
Yep.
We also get our workers' comp, and that's what we get our reduction in because we buy property insurance and health insurance from the same carrier.
Yeah, if you want to proceed with workers' comp, I'm fine with that.
I have a new question on
Yep.
default. You get over the personnel items on the default budget, which is the largest of the differences in the previous budget. The other one that stands out the most is our charge for hydrants.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an 11% increase.
Mm-hmm.
What contractually are
Yeah.
we?
We have more fire hydrants down in Lynchfield Danis Park because of the water project.
That's the 11%.
All new fire
Plus
hydrants.
there's increase in rates.
And Manchester
That's both.
has quite a fee on that?
So are we.
Is it Grassmere
Grassmere.
Three.
Village?
Yeah, all three.
All
Yeah.
three.
We rent hydrants.
We rent hydrants from, and the rates
Actually, we're
have
gonna,
increased
maybe
in
we should
some.
sublet that out to Poland Springs, and we can get
Right,
some
any
more-
water main extensions where they're adding hydrants
Yeah.
Right.
increases the fee to us.
I can get you the number if you'd like, the number of new
No,
hydrants and
I
the increase in rates.
wanted to know if there was, what was the contractual
That's
reason behind the increase.
And your next one is streetlights, if you notice.
That was a rate increase for streetlights.
That's what I'm saying, yeah, streetlights. Plus, whenever these developments go in and the contractor puts the streetlights in, when it's accepted by us, that's another light that we're paying for.
Have we explored changing over from high-intensity lights to an
LEDs.
LED light? Energy efficient?
We already did that.
I think they did.
In streetlights? I think they're doing that in traffic lights.
Oh, maybe it's
So it was traffic lights.
Yeah.
We went through a program with the streetlights, and we finished that up, I'm gonna say, 5 or 6 years ago. I don't
Streetlights
know.
or traffic lights?
No, streetlights. There was a program where we switched over. It was a long, involved process, but they got switched over to a different light at the time. So you get finished with the project, and they come up with a new light, and you gotta go through the whole thing again.
I think it was GE that just came out with a press release a couple of weeks ago or a month or two ago about parking lot off of South Willow Street, South and Maple, I believe, South Willow and Maple. That is now, it's like the first lot in the country that's all LED lights, low energy.
Well, GE's the one who pushed LEDs.
Oh,
so
absolutely, yeah.
They can
But I
phase
like
out
that.
all their other ones and
I'd like to
Sell 'em.
make an observation on streetlights. I looked at on the accounts payable, maybe 1 week ago or 2 weeks ago, was the monthly bill for streetlights. And I just did some mathematics on that. The average streetlight is 29 cents a day. But then you multiply that times 477 streetlights, 365 days a year, and it adds up to $50,000 a year for streetlights. And this says that it's basically a 14% increase, adding $7,000. Which is, 29 cents a day is not bad, but you do all the multiplication, it adds up to real money. So,
I was just looking at our budget for streetlights, it's 65,000.
okay. I just looked at 1 month's bill
Oh,
and did
okay.
the
Right.
mathematics on it.
right, on the 1 month.
All right, anything else on the default? All right. Next
Well,
is,
remember one other thing too, when you do your comparison, that we do get some monies back from our insurance carriers for some of the programs that we're in also. So you have to take that into account, such as accreditation from police. ELT does pay part of, they do give us money towards accreditation.
okay,
Do we have a total do we have a total on the default budget in this packet? Did I miss a page?
Oh, that was in last week's, I think.
Oh, from last week's?
Let's see.
well, you can also look behind in the back.
17,
I guess I didn't see it.
but it will be a little different now. I don't think that totals, that report totals, though. I did not do a new total.
Total.
Okay, I didn't think so, okay. Do you have one sitting there just for,
No,
okay.
but I could get that to you.
This report did not provide a total.
There wasn't a lot of adjustment, though, between last week's and this week's, just a few things were done.
This was just by departments.
All right, we're gonna move on to Glen Lake. Last week, I read into the record a letter from, reread into the record I think it was Andrew Cataret from the Piscataquag Watershed or River, I'm not losing
Local
track.
River Advisory.
Local, yeah, okay, thank you.
The local advisory committee.
I also read in an email from I'm trying to think what the guy's name was, from HUD.
Yeah.
Lord read, Jim, what was his name?
Patton?
And Attorney Drescher had some comments as well in an email. And so that's what we had last week. Sue, you've had a discussion with someone from the Water Resources Board. The Water Resources Board is the entity that the town had purchased this property back in the 70s, I think it was, early 70s. and we used a HUD grant to buy it from the Water Resources Board. And if you want to just tell us what that conversation was, and
They would frown upon us closing it to non-residents only. But they feel that an appropriate parking fee or user fee, nothing outrageous, and something that's available to everyone, for just non-residents would be appropriate.
they wouldn't put it in writing.
Right.
Right.
Well, they didn't put it in writing.
Okay, they didn't put it in writing. So, we've gone back and forth. Is there any? We have all this information in front of us. We should be able to come to some sort of a conclusion as to where we want to go.
I just want to point one thing out, just so that we're all aware of it and everybody knows. On the deed, I looked through the deed, and just so that everybody's aware, okay? On third page of the deed, I believe it is, down towards the bottom of it, down here, it says, "The grantee, by the acceptance of this deed covenants, and agrees with the grantor that the above-described premises will be used for public purposes only and will revert to the state of New Hampshire if used for any other purpose."
Right.
Right? Just want to make sure that we're all aware of it.
Yeah, I mean, it was my experience as I read that deed many years ago with regard to the school, and it's just how you define public purpose, and we had HUD that said that, I guess, their opinion, they were the ones who gave the money to the town way back, was that it could be restricted. Obviously, we have an opinion from the Water Resources Board, who actually previously owned the property, that said that they would not like it to see it restricted. Now, Water Resources Board is
DES now?
DES.
Mhm.
Okay.
What about Chief Sullivan's letter?
I apologize, Phil. Thank you so much for
Last tab.
Chief Sullivan. I'm going to read that into the record. And long story short, it was a memo from Police Chief Patrick Sullivan regarding the Glen Lake issue. Had a conversation with Superintendent of Schools Stacy Buckley regarding the possibility of using Glen Lake for overflow parking for the Glen Lake waterfront. Though she cannot speak for the school board, which was underlined, she advised me that she does not have a problem with people parking at the school if there is trash pickup done there by persons other than her part-time custodian. She added that there should be no parking in the fire lanes or on the grass if parking were allowed. So there was emphasis by the chief in terms of that Superintendent Buckley was not speaking on behalf of the board, and this was just her personal opinion. Superintendent Buckley said that she would support a ban on parking at the school should the other spaces for waterfront parking be turned into residents only. We both feel that the school spaces be open to non-residents, that with the school spaces being open to non-residents who are not community stakeholders, that concerns of trash, etc., expressed by the board and community members would be transferred to the school parking lot. I would like to add that should we allow Glen Lake school parking, it would adversely affect the amount of people Glen Lake waterfront can support. I will be attending the school board meeting scheduled for August 30th, where the parking issue will be discussed. I would also like to weigh in on the regulation of parking at Glen Lake waterfront. While I understand the concerns of the board and the community, I would ask that should the board go forward with resident-only parking, that it would be between the dates of June 15th and Labor Day. This would allow for the use of the lake during the less busy winter months for ice fishing and snowmobiling. During the winter months, that area is part of a designated snowmobile trail. If a sticker system is implemented to identify residents, I would ask that language be added that the stickers are affixed to the vehicle and readily visible on the driver's side of the vehicle. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. We also have in our packets, and I'm not going to read this into the records, it's really long, but this is a proposal for the Goffstown waterfront, and this was done by Selectman Pierce this past week, and it's pretty specific. So I guess the point where we're at is we've done I think we've done a good amount of due diligence on this, and although we just have to kind of make a decision as to where we want to go.
I have a suggestion. Could we use a process similar to what we went through with the Wallace-Mass Road intersection, where we look at we've got 3 proposals or 4 proposals, put the issues down, and take each issue and go across and identify how
So
that
a
proposal,
decision
a matrix.
Okay.
And then look at the one that scores the highest, the lowest, however we set it up, and
Want to go through that route? I have the benefit of having some bird's eye view of your laptop, which I think you already have a matrix there. Do you want to? I can turn it over to you, and
I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. I just have.
And a lot of those ones that we had, because the administrator our town administrator had given us some.
In last week's packet?
Right, in our last week's packet. So I don't mind turning it over to you. We can have the discussion and kind of.
I just have a template, and we can fill in the various proposals.
Do you want to do this as a group working through it, or do you want to do it?
I think that's how we did.
Right.
You come to a consensus on some extras.
Okay.
1%.
And there may be, I put across the top, resident-only permit, unlimited parking, which I believe Selectman Pierce's proposal was we would give out permits to residents, but we would not regulate parking.
And not regulate the trailer boating, the boats on trailers.
I included that in parking. Then residents only, regulated by permit parking. So you would have to park by permit and only residents could park there. Or open use by anyone, parking by permit only. So you would pay for a permit. Non-resident would pay, resident would not. Or do nothing, I guess would be the fourth.
Just a question on the first one, resident-only permit, unlimited parking. When you say unlimited parking,
No regulation on the parking.
as far as the school parking, is that what you meant?
Correct. That was my
You
proposal.
don't mean eliminating the no parking spaces?
No. In other words, there's no regulation on the parking. Parking is as it is today. The permits, my understanding from Selectman Pierce's proposal, would be an individual, almost like an ID permit, that you would keep on your person, and you would have to have it in your possession at Glen Lake. It's not on the vehicle.
A seasonal permit obtained at the town hall for a resident or a household. And this card is with the family unit as they're on the beach, on the waterfront.
Okay, so then the police would not be patrolling.
Parking.
Cars. They'd be
Correct.
patrolling people.
And that's what, when we go through this decision matrix, that could be perceived as a negative or a positive. Or
And I just put down at the bottom, low, moderate, high, and high as a scoring. So when we go through this, if we think the lakefront intensity for a particular proposal would be high, it would get a 10, or anywhere you decide to score it. And I'm sure there's other issues. These are the ones that I came up with. Lakefront intensity, lack of resident access, PD manpower required, revenue producing, enforcement effort, the programmatic staff time, either the town clerk, parking intensity, and there may be other issues, littering.
Right, but I guess I'm still not clear on, are we addressing anything across the street at the school?
Under which proposal?
Underneath these? Anywhere on here are we addressing that? I don't.
Which one of these 3 would address parking at the school?
Honestly, I think we need to eliminate the school first from the discussion. that's my own opinion. The school is kind of an animal out there that, once we decide what's gonna happen at the waterfront, then you look at the parking at the school, because the school board has to concur with that. Even if we say parking by permit only, unless the school concurs with that,
Yeah.
they can park at the school. If we say no parking at all at the waterfront,
I would
parking
find it
at the school
difficult
is
to
separate.
rank intensity if we don't address the school.
I guess that's the difficulty that I'm having, okay? Because I'm looking at that, and in my mind, I'm looking at those 18 spaces, and only those 18 spaces, because I guess in going through this entire process that we've gone through and the information that we've got, I guess the intensity of use is what stands out there as really the issue. If it wasn't for the intensity of use, you wouldn't have the trash. If it wasn't for the intensity of use, you wouldn't have the problems happening to the waterfront itself, the deterioration of the land, of everything. So it's the intensity. So I've had some thoughts, and I've also had some discussions with the chief because of the parking, and there's the fact that there's a playground that's over at the school. And I guess part of where the chief is also coming on this is because when we first had the school open, we had a discussion, I guess it was the chief who tried to do something about eliminating the parking there, and he couldn't do it. And it appears that I'm not sure of exactly what's been said, how it's been said, or what it is, but the understanding that I have is that I assume I believe it's a school district. School board had a opinion that playground is a public playground. They want to leave that open. There are parking spaces that are over there, okay? Some of the issues that you run into are that in the summertime, the school is open, okay? I mean, I've gone by there and I've looked at that and said, the school is open. I said, so a parent comes in, picks up the kid, and is picking up the neighbors, or, kids have friends. I'm gonna pick up the 3 kids today, tomorrow, whatever it is, so they pick them up and they're gonna take them to the waterfront. There's 3 more at the waterfront. They're parked over there at the school parking lot. They came for school business because they picked the kids up, but they're gonna grab the towels on the way back. They're gonna go down and go in there for an hour and a half, have some lunch or something, whatever. So how do you deal with the parking spaces that if the school board is of the opinion that spaces need to be made available for the playground? So that's part of the ordinance that needs to be in place to address perhaps a specific amount of spaces for the playground. And I'm not proposing anything else. I'm just saying this all is how it plays in. And to me, that school needs to be eliminated. Parking for the waterfront. Because that waterfront was never, when it was developed to what the nice park that we have down there, can't handle that. That's the reason why that parking area was expanded. No parking area was expanded as far away as you possibly could do it. It left with the 18 spaces. Then we've had the discussions about the residents only, okay? And I had some issues with that. But reading this part in the deed, I have issues with that being, for those spaces being for residents only because of the covenant that's in this deed. Because we might make a decision and we might make that residents only, and it could be a few years down the road where something could possibly happen. I mean, crazy things happen. The state could come back and say, well, you've been doing that for 5 years. You collected all this different money or something. You either give us X amount of dollars or the land goes back to the state. I don't wanna put the town in, I don't wanna see the town in that type of a situation. So I started to lean away from the residents only, more towards some type of a sticker. But you have to eliminate the parking, and only those 18 parking spaces are what you can have for that area. So, I mean, I'm not saying it to knock, I don't mind going through this matrix, but I just don't, I just couldn't get a grasp of how that fits in here.
Can I ask a practical question? How do we do that? Because I follow what you're saying, and I think you're on the right track, but how do we practically eliminate that parking at the school?
Well, I guess my thought at this point, if we're gonna go forward, I think we need to get forward to a point that's non-specific but more philosophical of how to address the issue, and then perhaps try to deal with the school board with what the issue is, and if we could get them on board that we can't have parking there, that's, you can park there and get down to the, without being in violation, that, and maybe part of what we need to do is the parking, the no parking ban that we have there, maybe what we need to do is add it, is that your vehicle will be towed.
Selectman Pierce.
I feel that my proposal that I've offered, and Selectman Campusano listed it as the first column, addressed every one of your points. And the whole premise of my proposal is it takes the parking issue completely off the table. There's no need to address it with a permit to be on the waterfront. And that reinforces Selectman Fournier's point that he would like that waterfront available to residents. And so if you control the waterfront by residents only, if there's 30 residents who just coincidentally wants to use that land, waterfront all on the same day, while there's only 18 spaces. And we can control the intensity by issuing how many permits we wish to issue in a season. It could be, we could issue like 200, potentially issue 200 permits. But it's random. Those 200 households, what are the odds that some proportion of them would ever be there on a Saturday or Sunday or Monday or Tuesday? And if the first year of this system, we find that it's underutilized, and even though we issued 200 permits, there's only 3 people there every day. Okay, we can issue 400 permits. But trial and error. But take the parking off the table. That also takes off the table a concern you raised a few sessions back. A van pulls up, lets everybody off, and then the van disappears. Well, that wouldn't happen under my proposal.
Hold on, so I want to get ready.
A van from another community. So that's
You haven't had a chance to talk yet. Do you want to?
No, I think I've said enough in the past what I would like to see, so I won't belabor it.
Okay.
Okay, but what this gets down to is the very issue that of the enforcement, because you're going to get to how is it enforced. And I guess the other thing that I have a concern with that is that you're doing exactly what the covenant in this deed says, you're restricting it to residents only. And that's the concern that I have.
I would like to have the opportunity for the police chief to, and park, I've put a role in here for the park department too. But have them address what their concerns are with my proposal. And then, modifications can, maybe out of 200 permits, maybe 50 of them would be out of, for non-residents. And these are permits that are free. So there's no money being saved or the state could potentially ask us back for under your scheme. And 5 years down the road, if the state says we want the land back, we'll give it to them. Let them have the problem.
All right.
Yeah, there is a reversionary clause.
I haven't had a chance to weigh in, so if you don't mind. I'm not, so, we can go through the decision matrix, and I'm good with that. From the residents that I've spoke to, the vast majority of them want a residence-only waterfront. And that's, I've been talking to a lot of different people and folks that I thought that wouldn't even do that, they want a residence-only. And in terms of the intensity of use and the parking, if the Glen Lake School was only for residents with no trailers, I think one of the big issues with intensity of use is that lake cannot support a lot of power boats and jet skis. And so as far as I'm concerned, the number of slots for trailers really needs to be limited, no matter if they're residents or non-residents. I don't think we're going to have a huge intensity of use issue if it's Goffstown residents only. And if it does happen, then I think we can revisit it. But I'd like to see what happens over a year or two of if it was just Goffstown residents only. And I think that it does meet the spirit of the deed. It is open to the public. It's not a private entity, and it's for the Goffstown public. And again, from what residents have shared with me, other towns have these situations where it's only open to their residents. And I'm not sure I personally agree with that, but this is what a lot of citizens want to see happen.
As long as they're aware there is a risk.
Yep. Yep. So, I mean, and I guess there's a risk in everything that we do. But in terms of policing it, yep, you got a transfer station sticker or any type of sticker, and it's easy for the police to go there, and if you're not, then you're going to get a ticket. And the same thing could apply for across the street. If you've got a trailer in there, you're getting a ticket. If you don't have a resident sticker, you're getting a ticket. If you want to go, and we can be creative and say for playground only.
Talking about residents only for
Residents.
trailers also?
What? We're talking about trailers that are at the school. Only at the school, because that's an intensity of use issue.
Okay.
And I also think that where I would respectfully disagree with this person from Water Resources Bureau is that it is open to the public, because those trailer spots are open to anybody. So, certain parking spaces are only, the 18 are for Goffstown residents only, but of I think the 7 spots, anybody can use that, and anybody can walk and get dropped off and use it. It's just the parking that is the issue, and not all of the parking spaces are open to the general public. Only the trailer ones are. So, and I just think we try it for a year or two and see what happens. But my personal sentiment might be more in line with you guys.
So is it
But-
parking for residents only? That's the only thing that's regulated is parking.
Parking. Only,
For
and only
residents.
the 18 and the school would be parking for residents only. The trailer would be open to anyone.
But the waterfront itself
The
is open to
waterfront
anyone.
itself is open to anyone.
So
That's the only way the whole notion of trying to police it and asking for let me see your permit as you're walking around. I mean, it's very, very difficult. So if you're asking for enforcement, I think, in terms of your enforcement effort, it's a heck of a lot easier as a cruiser's going by. If he sees, I'm going to stop because I see 4 cars without a sticker.
let me just ask then, why would we then not, and I'll just throw this out there, charge for a non-resident sticker and get some revenue?
Because in
Charge $75, $100 a permit, and for the people that may want to buy it and use it as non-residents, we're generating some money to hire someone part-time to pick up the trash, or, we're not going to get thousands of people coming to Goffstown to buy non-resident parking permits.
because then that doesn't address the lack of resident access issue. The residents, from what folks have told me, is that they don't.
You can't get there.
You're going to cut dramatically
Wow.
80% of the people that just drive by and stop.
And I understand, let's just say there would be a reduction, you can talk about a percentage, but it's a percentage of a small number, that's all. In other words, if you had 200 parking spaces and someone said, we'll have a reduction, you can understand that. 18 parking spaces is, if someone said, hey, we'll do 50, reduction of 50%, it's only 9 spots. That's my point with this, is that it just, you're limited to 18
Keep the school to
parking
residents
spaces.
only.
And the school part, which is what Phil was touching about, and which College was here was about, was the conversation with that is that when you do utilize the school parking, then you're overutilizing the beachfront.
Right. 28 spots.
Yeah, so you're really, what you're really hearing from those people who work in design on the beach, which is why all that's set up the way that parking is that that's what the beachhead can handle, is that amount of people. So I do agree that, you're looking at that reduction there, that you're looking at those 18 spots, and we're saying if there's only gonna be 18 spots, that's where you have to look at and say, geez, how are we servicing the people of the town and granting them access to, like, how can you enhance that? Which puts you down to, hey, townspeople, make it simple, a transfer station sticker, and you're moving on. I mean, I would say keep it simple.
Anyone? I mean, we have a lot of different opinions on this, and I'm not sure if we're gonna come to consensus, so
Well, I'm still struggling with, I've got the original Glen Lake proposal. I have the Glen Lake proposal that was given to us this year.
right, and that was a non-resident fee.
It
Well,
was
the
a
issues
kiosk.
that were raised were a lot more than there's only 18 spots.
Right.
And I don't see where just limiting it to, well, particularly because we're not limiting it to just residents. You could conceivably have the entire trailer parking lot with non-residents.
Right.
So we haven't addressed littering, we haven't addressed aggressive dogs, we haven't addressed, there's glass, drinking, all of those things are, I mean, what have we done other than just saying these 18 spots are now open to just Goffstown residents? That's not what I heard as part of the issues at the waterfront.
And I think that the question was, if it was just Goffstown residents, would you see less of those problems? Because they're residents, and now, then the flip side of it was you had the mountain-based pond where somebody said, well, that's an area where it's littered, and that is only for Goffstown residents.
But that's, I don't
More
think.
secluded area.
It's a secluded area, I don't think you can do a fair comparison. I mean, it's utilized by a different segment of the population, I mean, it's secluded and things happen there, yeah.
Don't forget, we had liquor and shooting with Goffstown residents at that one.
I mean, it would be on the same premises such as rails to trails. The more people use it that are within the town, the more it gets policed, and we hope.
I mean, is there- I guess what I'm trying to say, is there a compromise or a way to address all issues? I mean, if it was a permitted situation for the 18 spots and people were willing to pay a seasonal permit of $50 or something like that, do you think that a lot of the people that go there now would pay $50 to not be guaranteed a spot? I don't know.
I have a hard time that we would charge for any permit for any resident of this town.
Not a resident, no, non-resident.
Okay, and with that being said, for the amount that we would gain in that, I don't think it outweighs the access of people from this town to go there.
So you're saying, let's just say hypothetically that we charge $50.
No, I'm not saying that.
What?
I would not
He's
say
saying
that.
residents only.
I'm saying non-residents would be charged. I'm just saying, just hear me out.
Yeah, okay.
If we charge $50 for non-residents for a seasonal permit,
Yeah.
and you had 50 people partake in that program, you would generate $2,500.
You can do the math,
Okay.
yes.
Nick, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but
No.
that could be revenue to offset someone who is hired to every Monday through Sunday, 7 days a week to pick up trash at certain times.
I would like to think that, once again, looking at our town, $20 million budget, that we can afford to have our residents have access to the lake. And especially when we look at what people receive and what they pay out in taxes, I think they would want that access.
And you mentioned yourself, you'd be charged fee for 50
I just throw a number out.
non-residents, whatever it is. You're not guaranteeing a parking space.
Right.
And so there's some irritability there. They come out for a Sunday drive and there's no parking. What do they pay the fee for?
It creates a problem. When one pays a fee, it's
There's
paid
an
with the idea
expectation
that
that you're
there's
gonna have 'em.
expectation. And
Right,
I
but
think
if I-
that creates the problem.
But if I could, just similar to the other permit system, there would be something in the paperwork that says having a permit does not guarantee a parking spot.
That's what I mentioned that.
And even
Limited
that,
parking.
with that, there's also costs in making the permits and things of that nature. Once again, I still bring it back to 18 parking spaces, and you look at the population and access. I think for the little you would gain in revenue, it's not outweighed by the idea that it'd be a town beach and give them the opportunity for a year or two, and let's see how it goes, and see how it works.
If we could talk about the enforcement of that.
Right.
I'm a town resident, I park there, I use the waterfront, but I don't have a dump sticker.
Right.
Well, we can go get one for free.
Put your
Right.
put your registration on the dashboard.
So PD would be responsible now to run registrations?
No, because your registration will have your address on it, and you would have that.
I think, I would just say you would need to get a transfer station sticker. It's not that difficult. I don't think we're asking too much. In fact, we asked that just to go to the transfer station.
Right.
I don't show up without.
I don't think that's that difficult.
That's not an issue.
And if you got a ticket, you would simply you can go down to the police department. I'm a resident. I'm sorry.
Didn't get my sticker
And
yet.
you're done.
I'll
Right.
pick it up next week.
I don't think that's that bad.
I-
I wouldn't ask them to run plate checks, but I certainly.
Regardless of how we went, even if it was just resident parking only, I would advocate for a different, larger, colored sticker that is readily visible from the road by a police officer in the car. So very quickly, because those transfer station stickers don't stand out. Depending on the curvature of the windshield, and you may or may not see it, and it's a low-cost item to just get a large, bright, blue, whatever, 2010
Mirror.
Glen Lake, resident.
Mirror hanger.
Well, or something that's attached to the vehicle in a visible location. but it's-
Transferable.
But this way, it's very easy.
I would be
for-
opposed to a concept of, you would be excused by putting your registration on the dashboard. To me, it's displaying your name, addresses.
Nick wants to see it from the road on the drive-by, is what you're saying.
Well, I think
correct? No, I mean, is that
It's a
what-
personal information issue.
And you're just saying, hey, just get a different sticker, a little different size, a little different color.
I mean, on any day, drive by now and see if you can tell if there's a transfer sticker or not on a vehicle as you're driving by.
You can't not driving, you have to walk.
And I think what we want to do is minimize the impact that it's going to have on a police officer's time, having to get out of his vehicle and walk and check versus just being able to drive by and see an appropriate
I
sticker.
could with that. I could with that.
You probably have to change it every once in a while.
Yeah.
I don't know if you had necessarily have to change it every year, different color or something on that. You'd have to do something with that.
Like I said, I don't. To me, the status quo is not working. So going with the status quo is not working. I'm not sure if I'm entirely convinced that it's Goffstown residents is the total solution, but I'm willing to go there as the next step and see if it if it solves some of these issues. And if it doesn't solve some of these issues, then guess what? We'll change it again. I mean, I don't have a problem with that.
Are you thinking just for that time period as recommended by the police chief from June 15th to?
I think that's a fair.
Yeah, no, I think that is because, I think what some of that does also is because the rest of the season fishing is not only summertime, fishing is wintertime. It eliminates all the craziness that you could have. People that ice fish, they're not gonna have trailers. They're gonna have a truck or a pickup or whatever they have, and they're gonna go out on the frozen water. Okay, and now do we differentiate between ice and thawed ice? They drill their hole, put their holes in with the auger. They sit down, they put their tip-ups in, they sit down, they put the heater on, and now they're on water. If you have to start having permits to be on the water, it just runs into some
That's state
i-
state
i-
land.
issues. So I think that 15th, and you have the snowmobilers in the wintertime. This way you don't have to, that's all non-issue. I would prefer to keep it simple. I don't have a problem with the transfer station stickers, if you want to do the transfer station stickers. The only thing that I've thought about with this is, so now if you make the parking for residents only, are we still gonna have residents that say, I can't ever get there, I'm a resident and I can't get there, so,
I think that's inevitable.
no,
We have a population of 18,000 and 18 parking spaces. That's inevitable, but at least it'll then that it's residents.
And if you go that route in terms of only the 18 spots for residents, and now you're worried about the school, then,
But we have to address it at the school.
okay, right, but if you wanna keep that parking lot open for,
Which parking lot are you
the
talking?
Glen Lake parking lot, if that is open for parents who wanna take their kids on the playground, which I see all the time.
Okay.
Then common sense dictates that when I've done it when I took my kids there, I would just go right there, and the kids are there, right there. So if there's cars
There's
parked
10
there,
cars there,
and there's
nobody
nobody
in
at
the
the playground, then I'm thinking something's not right.
It seems to me, though, if we could philosophically agree on where we seem to be going, and then have the discussion with the police chief, with the school board, what the issue is, and work some type of an ordinance up that allows, let the people that have to do the enforcement and the people who want the playground, let them figure out, maybe they can put a restriction on a number of spaces for the playground.
Right, that's what I was
don't know.
thinking.
For playground use only?
Playground use only, right, that's what I was thinking.
Something.
There's about 8 to 10 spots right there in front of that playground.
Okay, but have it worked out with that. And it seems to me that if you had the resident-only parking with those 18 spaces, the waterfront itself is still open to the public. The trailer spaces for fishing across the road are still open to the general public. And outside of June 15th to Labor Day, it's open to the general public. So, it's,
Enough? It's a start.
Are there any other areas that we need to address for parking? Are we gonna shift the parking problem elsewhere
well,
during that time period?
one of the issues that we do have, it's similar to the high school parking,
Upton
like when we
Lane,
had,
what's that?
you have Upton Lane that people do park. There are issues. I've driven down Elm Street and I've seen a group of teenagers, bathing suits, with towels, walking towards, the waterfront. They were a distance away, but,
And these are understandable things, and these are going to take place.
absolutely,
And
absolutely.
and hopefully, I just wanna make sure we're all talking the same piece. I'm not just saying that we're making a restriction to parking, I'm saying that the beach will become for residents only, and we'll monitor it through the parking piece.
Right.
Okay, just wanna make sure we're talking.
No,
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 We're talking the same language,
no,
I
no.
hope.
Well,
no.
that's not
I
what I'm
think
hearing.
okay,
That's what I'm trying, that's what I
you
want.
can
That
only,
may be the outcome,
right,
but that's not what I'm saying, hearing here, because someone who has a boat trailer that's a non-resident
Well,
that
we
parks
understand the
could
boat,
also be using the beach.
Right, that's exactly what I understood.
Right.
I've got
Okay.
20
no,
people in
and
my
and
car,
and
3 are out on the boat, and
I'm not having a
the-
problem with that either in those, I follow what you're saying there. I just wanna make it, I guess what I'm saying is that if we had made it a town piece, you wouldn't be worrying about the other streets if for some reason it started to shift to there.
Steve, I think my point is that I tried to throw something out when I said the 18 spots are for Goffstown residents only, and the trailer is to the general public.
Correct.
When you throw in what the police chief's recommendation was for a seasonal time when that's in place, I think there's enough wiggle room there that it's open to the general public. So it would honor the spirit, I think, of the deed to a certain degree, maybe not the way some people would like. There's enough there to work with.
I will be fine with that.
And maybe let's see how it pans out.
Okay.
And then, as Phil said, let's turn this over to the police chief and the school to see how they want to figure out with the playground, and let the people have to enforce it. You know, whether that's a bigger sticker, if the police are satisfied with the transfer station sticker, then so be it.
The only
No,
question,
but we're not gonna be going on the beach
I understand.
checking IDs.
And I'm not looking
Okay,
for
right,
that.
I'm just saying.
I'm just saying, I think what you're saying hopefully works out, and that works great. I'm just saying, what happens, I'm just gonna put out one scenario. What happens if it transfers to parking further down in other areas, and you're doing the drop-off and parking? How are you going to address that? Because I expect that probably will take place.
To a
It might
certain
be in
degree.
To a certain degree, but what if it takes place in large scale? How do you handle it then?
Then we're gonna have to come back here, and we might have to
Well,
put
it
in
took us a year to
another.
get this far, that's why I wanna talk about it
You'll
now.
have 18 spots.
No, but you follow what I'm saying, you know,
Okay, but you could argue right now you have that similar, on a very hot day, those spots get taken up, and people they do that, they park, they've been doing that.
Yeah, so,
Yeah, they do.
But it's like the same, I remember when I was in the
Park at
school.
Big James Lane.
When I was on the school board, we had the same issue with high school students, and before you know it, that
Yeah.
circle got bigger and bigger and
Exactly.
bigger, because you're on the board.
Exactly.
And after a while, it's like, okay, I'm not walking, right, a mile and a half to go to, so it comes to a point where like, there is a breaking point. So are we there?
I think
So as soon as they work out the school issue, parking,
So
then we'll have a public hearing on where you wanna go?
or develop an ordinance and then.
Right.
Develop an ordinance and
Right.
then go to
If
public
we-
hearing?
If we take a position
Or
tonight,
amend our ordinance?
then it ultimately has to go through the ordinance process,
Right.
which is quite a number of weeks,
Right.
and meanwhile, the school board will have
But
set their sessions.
Right, but I think Phil said it best when he said, we're really deciding on more of a philosophy or framework.
Right.
The ordinance
The
and the meat and
details.
potatoes, the details are gonna be done by the police and
The
the
people
school,
who have to
right,
deal with it on a daily
school
basis.
board. But I'm just gonna kind of recap it, that it's gonna be this Board of Selectmen's recommendation to proceed with resident-only parking for the 18 designated spaces at the Glen Lake waterfront. The 7 trailer spaces will be open to the general public, and as the police chief stated in his memo to us, that this restriction for residents only for the 18 spaces would only apply between June 15th and Labor Day. And then to direct the police chief, and then I think one of the members of our board and the school board to work out the details of the ordinance.
What's our recommendation for the school parking lot?
I think
Would it
our
be resident
recommendation,
only?
that it would
No
be
parking for the
no
waterfront.
parking for the Glen Lake waterfront, parking only for the playground in designated spaces, I think would be, because that would help with the intensity of use
Right,
piece.
because that's the big issue.
Right.
And the other thing that needs to be looked at is the way the current ordinance is worded, to make sure that it's, we're dealing with designated spaces, so you don't have to worry about, well, somebody parked on the grass and they're not in there and it doesn't, okay, but that's what they gotta work on.
Now, what the school may come back and they might say, can you put something in the ordinance that says that, unless by specially designated times for the school, that it would be used. So what would, ordinarily, let's say that there was something that would be done on a Saturday, if the ordinance allows for them, those exceptions, then they could give out a placard, which would be put on a car, so that if they're having an event, it's those types of things, you can be a little bit
Or again,
creative.
you know, if it limited to those time periods.
Right.
For the rest of the remainder of the year, they wouldn't have an issue of who uses the school parking lot.
Right.
Because it's not gonna impact the
Right.
waterfront.
And I think when we do this, I think we have to be a little bit, remember, there was no waiver in this thing, if you remember. So
Right.
we need to put a waiver in so that the selectmen have the opportunity to waive the ordinance by special exception for a day or whatever.
Whatever,
Right, whatever.
yeah, to
Because we
deal
don't,
with those
which is not in there right now.
To deal with those issues.
All right.
Just
Or the police chief, or whatever
Right.
it is.
There's one last piece, and I'll put up on the parking with the boating for the trailers.
Yeah.
Do we wanna reserve any of those? Not, I understand you don't wanna do all of them. Do you wanna do a percentage or a number, I shouldn't, not even percent, a number for town residents for trailering also?
I don't wanna get into that, that's too complicated. Keep it simple at this point.
Yeah, I don't know, I'd just be inclined just to keep it simple.
Okay, well, I'm not wait either way,
Yeah.
so I won't go any further.
All right,
We're good?
I think we're good. Can't believe it. All right,
Do we need a motion?
okay, well, everything I just said, so moved.
Well, is it a
it's a
consensus of the
consensus.
board
Yeah.
to go through
Right.
with?
Because they may come
It's
back
gonna
with,
come back to you with
Anyway.
an amendment to the ordinance, and at that time, you can look at it and see if
Okay.
you're happy with it. But I think we got the sense of the board here.
All right.
We're good.
Okay, we're done with that. Next is committee report, library trustees. I met with the library trustees last week, and, man, they got a lot of, like, procedures and process. I mean, they're just going to town on, like, their library trustee packet for if you're a new trustee. They've also, kind of what we had, the Board of Selectmen, like, rules of procedure. I mean, they are really going to town on, their mission statement and their goals, and that's what they've been spending a lot of time on. Just so you know, every meeting, the trustees, they go through all their financials, they go through, similar to what Sue does, they go through their director's report, talk about the activity of the library in terms of very, very busy summer programming. What else? They, as you know, they did hire 3 pages. I think that was generally, they're putting the final touches on a lot of their procedures and processes. Really, and they've spent a lot of work, on that. There will be, I'm surprised we hadn't hit us yet, Sue, but they did have a resignation. Richard Chamberlain resigned, and I thought you would have gotten the paperwork on that. You didn't?
I didn't. Read
Richard
anything about
Chamberlain resigned, and the board nominated Tess Martz to fill the vacant term of Mr. Chamberlain. So she would serve until,
Kathy might have gotten it.
okay.
Go to the town clerk.
But typically, we get that. So we can deal with that next week in terms of
why
appointment.
would we get that? Isn't she an alternate?
She's an alternate, and she would be filling the full.
But I don't know if that goes to us.
I thought it did. I thought it was a recommendation from, yeah.
That's
No, but
Yeah, they are.
Yes,
an
believe it or not.
anomaly, I believe.
Yeah.
No,
Most elected boards choose their own.
No, but I think with the library trustees, because it's an alternate going to full,
Right.
that they do, but if there's a vacancy and it's an appointment to fill the vacancy, that comes to us with their recommendation.
We can research that.
Yeah, it needs to be
Okay.
researched.
I forgot to ask Carl when he was here, can we get an update on the parking lot? I know it's been constructed, they have it blocked off with tape.
Oh,
They
he
were
just said
waiting-
that. He said they're actually going to pave it.
Why are we paving it?
He's able to pave it.
Isn't there a cost to that?
That's
I mean,
what I heard him say, too.
I heard he said not this week, next week.
Yeah,
Yeah, they were hoping to do it
Yeah.
this week, but with the weather, he said we probably won't pave it till next
Right.
week.
I thought that was the road.
I don't know.
Driveway.
Road? Oh.
The access road, the joint access road?
Or just the,
I don't know, it wasn't clarified.
He didn't specify what and how much was being paved. He just said it's being paved.
There's one part that's really hard.
In question what's being paid.
Right, okay, but I'm just going back to it. Wasn't our original idea to keep this low cost
Yes.
gravel? That's it? Why are we if it is in fact being, why are we paving it?
We had spoke at one point, and what if, because with the gravel, we said that would only be utilized prior to snowfall. And there was conversation that came out saying if we could do it at a low cost and make sense that we could utilize that parking space through winter when it's probably the highest demand. So I'm not sure I don't know if any other conversation took place, but we did have that in one of our discussions. So I don't know what this cost is for the paving. Maybe that's one of the factors that came in. I don't expect we'll be doing anything too soon with that area, so if we could utilize it.
I'd be in favor of, if it could get done, and we can get it in the budget, then.
Because winter's the most difficult time there when you do utilize the work.
All
Can
right.
I just ask a question?
Yeah.
Anything we want to have Dave talk to Carl about with that parking lot or not?
This day?
That's his department, right?
Regarding the paving, I was in favor of it for, Selectman Fournier mentioned the wintertime use.
I know we talked about it as a board, it wasn't like we took a vote or anything on it, but there was that question, could we utilize it year-round if it wasn't going to be a considerable cost? So maybe we can just find out what that cost is then.
It's all relative, what's a considerable cost.
And there's no lights there.
Yeah, but if you eliminate, I guess if you got one of the things done, then you can come back in a year or two and put the light up.
You want a cost on lights?
No, I think we had a cost on,
29 cents a
we had a
night.
cost on the
29
parking
cents
lot.
a day.
Yeah, now what about the striping? You get into that. Where's the edge of the pavement? Somebody parked on the other side and now their car's
Let me get
stuck
this
in the
straight.
mud.
We're okay with gravel with no painted lines, but if we put tar, we better have a painted line.
Well, the other thing too is,
I will. Thank you for the reminder. I have one new item if you.
just one sec.
Are we on
Did you want the library?
I'm just saying that,
Do we need to appoint?
CIP has this that has a quote-unquote parking lot next year
Do we
for
need to appoint
$102,000.
Do we need to appoint
So
you?
if he can
No,
somehow
Phil.
pave this
It's a
sucker,
vote.
and then
Phil,
this thing gets
do we need to
taken
appoint Phil?
completely off or moved way out, then.
Is that paving, I mean, there hasn't been any drainage done.
November 17th?
Right.
My
September
understanding is
17th
there's
is the
drainage
meeting.
underneath that parking lot.
Oh, no, we appoint for the actual vote.
Is this
at
the
November
permanent parking lot we're
annual
saying-
putting in now, or is this
No.
just temporary that's gonna get
A
torn up
card
again?
has to be returned with
Yeah,
the
but
delegate's
like I said,
name
if
was voting.
$5,000 buys you 5 or 10 years
How
until you
many
can do
votes
this
do
We're
we
thing.
not doing anything.
Because both
soon.
Phil
I don't
and
think
I are on that
anything.
committee.
What the point is. I mean,
Yeah.
A voting delegate.
A, okay.
Okay, so I'm sorry.
The New Hampshire Municipal Association is holding a policy conference on September 17th, and they're asking each governing body to appoint a voting delegate.
It's always been Selectman Devanza.
Okay. Then motion to appoint Selectman
You gonna be in
Devanza
town?
to represent.
17th? Yeah, I'll be.
He's the
in
guy.
Oh, really? He's in town.
town. I'll be in town.
You know why? They have a nice meal, don't they?
Oh.
So moved.
Not that one.
So moved. Seconded by Selectman Pierce. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I stayed for one of those meetings. I went to one of those meetings and I stayed late talking. And then, what was it? I went in by you talking to you because she was up there for the managers meeting. And they have lunch. So I went in there and I grabbed the
You got food, didn't you?
food. Somebody showed up. There was no more food. I felt bad.
Say you're the manager of Lion Borough or something.
No, I was sitting there talking to three of the managers.
Anything non-public? No?
No.
Okay.
Section 202A10 is filling vacancies, the library trustees. Vacancies occurring on any board of library trustees in town shall be filled as provided by RSA 66975, which is, the
Right.
selectmen. A vacancy occurring among publicly elected members of the board of library trustees of the city library shall be filled by city council or other appropriate appointing authority within 2 months of notice. The remaining members of the board of trustees. Board of Library Trustees may recommend to the appointing authority names of persons for appointment to vacancies on unexpired terms. The Board of Library Trustees may recommend to the appointing authority the names of no more than 3 persons who may serve as alternate members, and then you decide on that one.
But what does it say about an alternate going to
It doesn't,
silent on
right.
it? How did she get as an alternate?
They
Give us.
They gave us the name, and then we
And
signed
we
off on it. Yeah, I
recommended the
remember,
alternate,
yep,
yep.
and we recommended it, because I remember signing hers.
So how do we fill a vacancy?
We do, they gave us a name, which they
That's fine.
did, and then we're the appointing authority here.
But
So-
technically,
They recommended a name.
Oh, I just got an email from Jen Foley.
Hi,
Richard-
Jen.
Richard Chamberlain resigned from his position. Library Board of Trustees has voted to nominate Tess Smarts, a current alternate, to fill that position until the March election. If there's any paperwork for us to fill out, please let us know.
Should have sent it.
She just sent it,
Thank you, Jen.
9:31.
So we can do this next week as well. Kathy could then do the papers, then we'll
They have
vote.
another meeting coming up, or no, they
No.
just met?
They just met.
Okay.
So there's no rush.
Okay, we'll get the paperwork done.
Do we want to do it now? We could do it now without the papers.
do it when the paperwork's there.
Okay.
All
I
right.
want to do it next week, because then you don't meet on Labor Day. And
That's
so-
right, it's
Right.
an agenda item.
Right,
and
and it's
everything's done
posted,
right.
right. Yep. No, he's right, because this way people can see it, and, all right. I need the motion to adjourn, seconded by all those in favor. Aye.
Was the motion by Nick
Yeah,
and second by?
so,
Thank you.
good job, Father.